Chapter 11. Class D. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Class D, Class Placement Evaluation Result. First, Luz Eltania 8,350 points. Second, Kaya Astrian 8,200 points. Third, Seal Karndas 8,020 points. Fourth, Tristan Humphrey 7,720 points. Fifth, Doji 2 Mals 7,600 points. 300th, Isaac 20 points. Ian's a surprise. I can't believe he's rank 240 with grade E, it must be some sort of fluke. Phew, even a fluke deserves praise. I mean, look at Isaac, the same grade E got 20 points, 20 points. 20 points. Is he even human? Orphan Hall, the Magic Department building. The first-year students from the Magic Department were gathered in the hall on the first floor of the building. Meanwhile, a large piece of parchment, imprinted with the results of the class placement evaluation, hung on the hall's central wall. Last place. I was ranked 300th out of 300 students in the first year of the Magic Department. I expected it. But, seeing it is another matter. I really am in last place. On the other hand, Ian, who also had grade E magic power, was ranked 240th. My insignificance stood out even more. The students laughed as they looked at me. Ha! Nothing in this world is going my way. The class placement evaluation was essentially a test to determine which class each student would be assigned to. As the name implied, the provisional class was only temporary. Of course, I would be assigned to the worst class, Class D. For reference, the class placement evaluation reflected not only the results of the class placement evaluation, but also the results of the mana evaluation. In other words, Ian Fairytale, who had grade E mana, would also be assigned to the same Class D as me. Even when I played Magic Knight of M. Rakan, the result of the class placement evaluation was unconditionally evaluated as Class D. In the end, it was an inevitable fate for Ian. Class D itself was no problem. No matter which class I'm in, I'm going to do my best to become stronger. The problem was money. 20 points, so 20 gels, I would be given 20 gels, the price of 2 10-gel loaves of bread. How am I supposed to live on nothing but 2 loaves of bread? The only answer is a loan. I'm afraid I can't avoid being a debtor. A student's information was shared between the academy and the bank, since the island's banks themselves were under the academy's control. If the loan became a non-performing loan, their credit rating would fall, and the student's performance evaluation will be penalized as a result. It meant that if you lacked the ability, you should leave the academy, or die trying. It was a ruthless system befitting the elitist and predatory education policy of M. Rakan Academy. Why me? I let out a deep sigh. Shortly after the class placement evaluation, Luz reported to the academy regarding the appearance of the demon. The faculty called an emergency meeting. Judging from what happened in the game, I knew the gist of what they talked about. Firstly, when a demon appeared, it was kept secret to prevent confusion among the students. Because there were no signs of an outside invasion, it was concluded that the demon had been present in the Delphine Forest from the beginning. As a result, the academy staff would thoroughly investigate the academy grounds and devise alternatives for identifying and eliminating risk factors. Of course, the academy's alternatives would have little to no impact. Even if they inspect every corner of the exam hall just before the exam and put up a barrier, that wouldn't prevent the demons that were sleeping under the ground in the form of mana from emerging during the test. They couldn't stop it. In the end, the director and the principal would have to shoulder a heavy burden, but the academy would continue to run, so there was no need to worry. However, this time there was something different from the original game's story. I intervened. It's my existence as Isaac. Luz seemed to have also reported about the monster that had defeated the demon, which was just me in disguise. I could tell by looking at the notice posted on the bulletin board in Academy Square. The notice depicted a humanoid monster with ragged muscles, and it read: "Students who have seen a figure with this appearance, please report it." This is what it looks like. In the game, when you wore a cloak of disguise, your character changed as if you were wearing a skin. So I knew how scary the berserker looked. More than 2 m in height, with bulging muscles. That huge guy had the face of a ferocious monster with black skin and a large gaping mouth. The sharp but well-arranged teeth were clearly visible. Plus, the fangs were as big as those of a saber-toothed tiger, and with its haggard hood pressed down, the corners of his eyes appeared to be dark, which only served to emphasize its ferocious eyes that radiated an ominous red glow. All these traits combined to form an appearance that could only be described as menacing. I'm about to be misunderstood for a demon. The demons would continue to appear until Ian graduated, and I would continue to hunt them down. If the academy staff, who would be in trouble because of the demons, got to know me like that, I don't know what kind of trouble would arise. It was only a matter of time before my existence reached the ears of Student Council President Alice Carroll. The same went for being talked about by students. Just imagining it made my head hurt. It would be best to reach the final boss, the evil god Nephid, while reducing as many variables as possible. That's why I bought a magic cloak of disguise, but of course, it turned out to be a berserker skin. If I catch a demon and get misunderstood and attacked because of my appearance, it would be a disaster. Still, I couldn't help it. Firstly, I didn't know how to recognize the concept of that outfit. The only thing in stock was that one outfit, and the shopkeeper didn't explain anything. But I can't buy anything else anymore. One of the secret shop's features was that it didn't offer refunds or exchanges. And to add insult to injury, the price range was too high to buy another cloak of disguise. Currently, I was in a position where all of my assets would be gone if I just bought and ate 2 loaves of bread. In the first place, it was doubtful that other stocks would have come in time. I am hungry. The growling sound from my stomach brought me to tears. Hungry. But all I had was a 10-gel loaf of bread in my hand. I sat on a bench in broad daylight and began to eat. Now, my only remaining wealth was 10 gels. I would have to go to the bank later and get a loan. I'm a freshman who has just taken the class placement assessment, and I'm already in debt. I have played the game countless times, and nothing like this has ever happened. It's painful, really. Are you alone? Suddenly, a deep male voice called out from behind. It was an all-too familiar voice that I heard a lot while playing Magic Knight of M. Raken. I turned around to see the owner of the voice. Matteo Giordana, LV. Race. Human elements. Rock danger. His brown hair was parted into bangs, leaving his forehead exposed, and his facial features were defined. He had a sturdy physique, so he fit the image of a rock element. Matteo Giordana. He was a named character who would eventually face Ian Fairy Tale and play an important supporting role in the future. As I stared blankly at him, Matteo introduced himself. It's Matteo Giordana. You're Isaac, right? Matteo asked while leaning slightly on the bench. His voice echoed as if it were in a cave. I wish my voice was overflowing with masculinity like that. Right, why do you ask? Only 1 loaf of bread. Are you not eating a proper meal? That's because I don't have any gel. You've already used up the gel. No, no way. Were you robbed? Matteo furrowed his eyebrows. It was a response that reassured me that we were on the same side. It was only natural considering he was a commoner. He must have felt a sense of kinship with me, another commoner. Matteo's gang, which would be formed later, were all commoners. Matteo was going to rebel against the nobles, and Ian was the first to come into conflict. In order to prevent a bad ending, Isaac, me, needs to be this guy's subordinate for a while. Well. That's right. I lied on purpose to garner his sympathy so he would buy me food. Matteo had a strong sense of camaraderie, so he couldn't easily ignore a pitiful guy like me. And now, that camaraderie was directed toward commoners. Besides, he had become accustomed to saving money, and his magic skills were also top-notch. No matter what, he would always have a few extra gels. Damn it, the nobles did it again. Follow me right now. I'll help balance your nutrition. I didn't say whether the robbery was the work of a nobleman or a commoner, but Matteo seemed to make his own assumption. It would be great if I could just get some food. Due to his personality, it seemed I wouldn't have to starve for the time being. Sweet. I didn't expect that to work. Of course, I planned to pay off my debt all at once when the time came. I went to the student cafeteria with Matteo and ate a 50-gel meal. He asked who the robber was, and I evasively replied that I didn't know because it was late at night. The classes were determined by combining the results of mana evaluation and the class placement evaluation. This is the lowest among all the classes, Class D. In a classroom with 20 people, I was sitting in the middle. 5 students were assigned to the top class, Class A, and 20 students to the worst class, Class D. The rest of the students were clustered into Class B and Class C. In other words, the place I was in was the classroom for students in Class D. Meaning, all of you are the most incompetent freshman students currently in the magic department. In front of the podium, the professor in charge of Class D glanced over the students with blue eyes as he recited his orientation in an apathetic tone. It was Professor Fernando, a handsome-looking man with silver hair. I could see the fluttering figures of the Class D girls. It was to the point where I could start hearing jokes about how fortunate it was for them to be in Class D. Who could possibly be making such sarcastic remarks so happily? This is M.Rken Academy. In this world, only the strong survive. Professor Fernando continued to speak as he slowly paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. The sound of his shoes echoed throughout the classroom. The educational opportunities may be equal, but there is no consideration for the weak in results. If you don't become strong, you will only be eaten by the guys from the top class. So survive, failure to do so will result in expulsion. If you fail to meet the standard, you would be given a strike. Once you accumulated 3 strikes, you would be expelled. Come to think of it, maybe the reason that Isaac didn't appear after the beginning of the game was because he was expelled. I'll have to work harder. Even if you are in Class D, you are supposed to be the elite of the elite, just like the other students of M.Rken Academy. Develop thoroughly and try as hard as you can. This is your duty as both wizards and students of M.Rken Academy. If you do all that, you will graduate with your diploma. Do you understand? Professor Fernando stopped and asked the students in an ice-cold voice. The female students gave a lively, yes. Professor Fernando was taken aback by the unexpected mood of the students. I had been through this brief orientation so many times to the point of getting tired of it. I practically had the entire thing memorized. I was even capable of imitating the professor's voice. Then, let me explain the curriculum for Class D going forward. In the game, the cut scene ended here and the scene changed, and the phrase Act 2, Chapter 1, Class D appeared. It meant that the second act of the story had begun. Despite that, Professor Fernando's orientation continued. It was a scene outside of the game. By the way, the episode about catching Trevion the Evil was Act 1, Chapter 1, Ian Fairy Tale. The mana evaluation episode was Act 1, Chapter 2, Passion of a Grade E. The class placement evaluation episode was Act 1, Chapter 3, Class Placement Evaluation. During the first semester, you will intensively master one element. The first semester curriculum is also structured accordingly. If you can properly master one element, you will be able to become a proficient wizard. In line with the academy curriculum, it would be more efficient to intensively master ice magic during the first semester. The second element could be learned in the second semester of the first year. Afterward, Professor Fernando explained the schedule ahead. It was filled with stuff I already knew. It had nothing to do with the curriculum, but soon, Act 2, Chapter 2, Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case would begin. This was the episode where Ian and Mateo got involved, as well as the event where I could get the loot called the Abyssal Ring, which gave the wearer the ability to read minds. Then there was the Act 2, Chapter 3, Practical Training episode. During the practical training, the infamous Act 2, Chapter 4, Ant Legion episode would begin once Garcia the Hermit, commonly known as the Little Ant, emerged. One of the wailing walls of Magic Knight of M. Raken. In Hell difficulty. He was a demon who was hated by many players. His pattern was very tricky, and his level was 140. Even if I used the Hunter trait, it would be difficult to defeat him. In addition, Garcia's servants, the Disaster Ant Legion, had excellent collective intelligence and used all kinds of tactics to pressure the player. Now, why would the already Hell mode suddenly spike in difficulty? The reason was Garcia's setting. There was a countermeasure for Garcia that I had thought of beforehand. I just hoped it would go well. As much as Garcia was called a wailing wall, there was a very useful item called the Sheath of Disaster he would drop despite being hated. That has to be mine, no matter what. Next was the Act 3, Chapter 1, Battle episode. At this time, a PvP performance evaluation would be scheduled. It was sparring, which would be a way for the freshmen to fight one-on-one against each other. The key point of this episode was the scene where Ian fought loose and surprised the students by using his light magic. Who am I fighting with? By then, I would be a little stronger. It would be a good measure to assess how strong I had become. Let's just avoid insurmountable walls like Kaya, since it was obvious that I would just be overpowered. Next was the Act 3, Chapter 2, Familiar. That was when I could get a familiar, and the episode that concluded the long-awaited first semester, Act 3, Chapter 3, Semester Exam. This led to Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation. Once I finished Act 3, Chapter 4, the first semester would be over, and we would be given time off. In order to grow stronger, I would have to plan my vacation very specifically. Before that, though, I had to survive the Thunderbird. Let's keep thinking. I need to recall each episode in as much detail as I can, and use all the advantages I can get. And I have to defeat the evil god Nephid and clear this game. Luce couldn't concentrate on the class. Just as she had expected, she was assigned to Class A, and one student was already trying to build connections. Luce Eltania, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm from the White Clark family, swish. Once Luce arrived in the classroom, she ignored the students who were trying to make her acquaintance by keeping a cold demeanor. She didn't care much about others in the first place. Her main concerns were neither connections nor a youthful life. She entered this academy with her eyes on M. Raken Academy's senior diploma of the magic department. Then, her goal of becoming a tower master would be much easier. However, like a small fishbone stuck in her throat, there was something that kept bothering her. She couldn't hear the contents of Professor Phillips' class, who was in charge of Class A. It didn't matter, though, because it felt like she was reviewing stuff that she already knew. The demon, and Grung, after Luce reported what had happened during the class placement evaluation to the academy, she was told that there was no outside invasion. In other words, Grung and the demon were in Delphine Forest from the very beginning. At that time, there were only first-year students in Delphine Forest. Is it possible that either the demon or Grung was a student in the magic department who used a magic cloak of disguise or something? At least that can't be the case for the demon. The freshmen at the M. Raken Academy had to undergo a detailed verification process to see what elements they had. Just in case, if an intelligent demon had entered the academy, its darkness mana would have been discovered. In other words, there was no way the demon could be an official student. But Grung is different. On the other hand, Grung simply showed ice magic, an ordinary element. It was possible that the monster could be an academy student. It looked like he had come to hunt the demon. Did Grung know in advance that a demon would appear during the class placement evaluation? Such thoughts plagued her mind. What if Grung is a first-year student in the magic department and was in Delphine Forest during the class placement evaluation? What if he entered M.Riken Academy with the purpose of hunting demons? What if for some reason he didn't want to be discovered, so he used a cloak of disguise to hide his identity? It made sense that an absurd monster was hiding with such a motive. But Luce immediately shook her head. That's stupid. We already finished the mana evaluation on the first day. If someone was that strong, he would have been caught. The results of the mana evaluation did not lie. It was impossible to hide the maximum amount of mana. Unless it was the realm of an arch-wizard that Professor Fernando referred to. No way, it can't possibly be, right? It's not. It can't be. It wasn't possible for a student her age to have reached the realm of an arch-wizard. It wasn't realistic. Luce pondered as she stroked her chin with her slightly bent index finger. Or, maybe Grung is a vagabond, and was wandering through the Delphine Forest. Let's think about it, are there any more clues? Clothes. Clothes. Luce recalled the clothes Grung was wearing. Her eyes caught the appearance of the clothes that Grung was wearing when magic manifested and illuminated it in the night forest. The memory came back to Luce as vividly as a photograph, and she examined the fragments of her memory. Not entirely neat, but almost new. They weren't tattered enough to be seen as a vagrant. What if it was magic cloak of disguise? Perhaps he anticipated that a situation would arise in which he would be forced to conceal his identity. And, the story of him appearing to slay the demon. It didn't make sense, but at least one hypothesis came to mind. Among my classmates, there is a person who has reached the realm of an arch-wizard, and that person secretly entered this academy to hunt demons. There's some kind of mystery hidden in this academy. Luce let out a small laugh. She thought of it herself, but it was ridiculous. What nonsense am I thinking of? But what if it was real? It wouldn't hurt to investigate. Luce had always kept her heart closed to others since the age of 10, after she signed a contract with Thunderbird Gallia. But now, for the first time in a long while, she was seething with curiosity about someone else. First of all, I'll have to pay attention to my classmates who use the ice element. Luce wrote that decision with a quill on a parchment that laid beside her book. Uncovering Grung's identity, then, she smoothly underlined the sentence. Chapter 12. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case, 1, it was midday, and the sun was shining brightly. A cool breeze gently caressed my skin. I was chatting with Mateo under the shade of a tree after hanging out with him. Mateo, as expected, invited me to join his gang. He looked after me for 3 days, and I accepted the offer while pretending to be impressed by the fact that he bought me a meal, exuding the impression of "I will follow you." I was truly grateful. Thanks to him, I was able to fill my stomach and focus on training without becoming a debtor. A noble title. Give it to the dog. My purpose is to get revenge on the nobles who ignore the common people. I will become stronger here and raise the status of commoners. Mateo made a promise that I couldn't care less about. I pretended to be moved, saying things like, yes, and right. It was necessary in order to earn Mateo's trust. I felt as if I had become a new employee at the company, trying to please the manager. Someday, I will create a world where commoners are not looked down upon. You understand it well, since you were treated badly because you were a grade E commoner. Take my side, Isaac. I get it, I'll jump on board. It was a false promise that would be shattered soon. I have to stop the bad ending, so I'll have to play with you for a while. Just like that, I became a member of Mateo's gang. Besides me, there were 3 more people in Mateo's gang. One from Class B and two from Class C, all were of commoner origin. Ugh, do I have to do this? As a member of Mateo's gang, I had to put my bangs up. I didn't look very good with my forehead shown. Anyways, Mateo, who was holding the school uniform jacket over his shoulder, led the way, and I and his 3 subordinates followed. Mateo was working hard in order to rewrite the dark history. Is it because everyone has their bangs up? As we walked through the corridors of Orphan Hall, I could feel the eyes of the students focusing on us. Hey, it's that grade E commoner. That grade E guy joined Mateo's gang to survive. He was last in the class placement evaluation. No, they were solely staring and laughing at me. As expected of M.Raken Academy. The students' terrible personalities were amazing. What did you say to my friend? Ah. Oh, no, it's nothing, oh. Mateo picked a fight in my stead. Mateo, who was at the top of Class B, was a recognized talent. Most students didn't even dare to approach him. M.Raken Academy had a setting where one's social status didn't necessarily determine their ability to learn. Of course, that didn't mean that social status wasn't important, but rather one's skill and abilities held more weight in terms of status. Bastard, I snorted. Even though I was just a subordinate, I couldn't help but be grateful for Mateo's friendship. Of course, I was only grateful to him for taking my side. The current Mateo was naive and hopeless, so he wasn't particularly impressive as a person. Ian Fairytale. At that time, another kid beside me called out the main character's name. It was because Ian intervened when Mateo was picking a fight with another student. Mateo and Ian's gazes clashed. Silence. The air became heavy. That bastard, what are you going to say to brother Mateo this time? Cheeky bastard. Don't you think it's too much to call him brother when we're in the same class? Are you arguing with someone again, Mateo? Wow, it was the first time I'd heard Ian's voice in this world. A sharp voice like that of a main character. It was a very familiar voice that I had heard countless times while playing the game. I almost said hello because I was so happy to see him. Mateo stepped closer to Ian and looked down at him in an intimidating manner. Ian Fairytale, the second son of a viscount. As expected, you are annoying too. What are you going to do about it? I will use you as a stepping stone for my goal, and as an example of my hostility toward the aristocracy. You foolish bastard. Okay, they're fighting, the story is going just as planned. According to the story of Magic Knight of M.Raken, Ian and Mateo must have already met before and were on the verge of fighting. The root of the problem was that Mateo asked a Class C student in the magic department for a 1.1 spar at the training ground. The opponent was a discriminatory aristocrat who usually despised commoners. Mateo obliterated him with zeal. At that time, Ian, the protagonist with a strong sense of justice who happened to be on the same training ground as Mateo, stepped up and stopped him and the two engaged in a battle of nerves. After a few words, Mateo pretended to be generous and walked away. That was the story I knew. Am I annoying? Then let's fight. Mateo provoked Ian. I won't fight with you, you're not even worth fighting with. You're weak, I already know that you're all talk. The war of nerves was short-lived. After a brief snowball fight, Mateo ignored Ian and started walking again, with his hands stuck in his pockets. His subordinates, me, and 3 other male students, followed Mateo. Like some third-class villains, they stuck out their tongues at Ian or mocked him as they passed by. Of course, I followed suit. Please don't faint when fighting demons. There's a girl who always sticks with Ian. Amy Holloway. She's the daughter of Count Holloway. Somewhere in the Josina forest. The Mateo gang, including me, were gathered in a spacious abandoned warehouse, having a third-rate villainous strategy meeting. Let's kidnap her. Are we actually gonna kidnap her? The subordinates were startled. I pretended to be surprised on purpose, too. As expected, Mateo's strategy was following the original story. BDNVL.M Act 2, Chapter 2, The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case. It was an incident that took place when Ian's childhood friend Amy Holloway was kidnapped by Mateo's gang. This was the moment when Ian and Mateo's gang began to fight in earnest. I'm not saying we're going to do anything bad to Amy Holloway. We'll just kidnap her and lock her up somewhere. She's just a bait to lure in Ian. Brother, what do you mean? It's a reminder for the nobles that if they look down on us commoners, they will suffer severe consequences. After defeating all of Mateo's men, Ian confronted Mateo on point 1. Meanwhile, a demon appeared. It awoke as a result of Mateo's extremely powerful mana. Of course, the demon's goal was Ian, who had the light element. However, the demon attacked the hindrance, Mateo, first. Ian was the only person who could protect Mateo at that time, since all of his subordinates were passed out. Once Ian saved Mateo, the two would form a temporary alliance to defeat the demon. Mateo then apologized to Ian, and the two became friends. Anyways, it was the first time I saw Mateo's gang planning their strategy. It was kind of fun to see a scene that did not appear in the original game. The first is Ian Fairytale, that cretin. We can't force him to fight, so we need to give him a reason to. I intend to thoroughly bring him to despair. As expected, brother. When I was playing the game, I thought he was just a third-class villain and didn't think much of it. But looking at it now, Mateo was a real idiot and one hell of a bastard. His subordinates were on the same level as him. They all responded by saying that they would obey Mateo's will or that they would show the strength of commoners. I had two reasons to join Mateo's gang. The first was to deal with the demon. Second was. Then the kidnapping, I'll do it. All eyes fell on me. The second reason I came into Mateo's gang was, to safely kidnap Ian's childhood friend as well as one of my favorite characters, Amy Holloway. Leave it to me. I want to be of use too, Mateo. Mateo's gang was taken aback by Ian's unexpectedly good combat skills. Contrary to Mateo's intention, he ended up treating Amy quite harshly. It was probably a story device to escalate the conflict, but I hated it. Kukukukukuk. Ha ha ha, I couldn't understand why Mateo's gang was laughing like a bunch of third-rate villains. But for some reason, it was fun, so I jumped into the mood and laughed like a villain too. I felt a sense of belonging as I ate together with Mateo's gang. When Mateo got into a fight with someone, we would glare at them from the side, and we would gather in the abandoned warehouse, to share the hardships we had to face being neglected by the nobles. Well, it's a group that will disband soon, so I should enjoy it to the fullest. Kuk. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. It was fun. Tomorrow will be the end. The final date of the operation was tomorrow. Somehow, the number of Mateo's gang increased by 2 more, but it didn't matter. After all, they were all extras who would get knocked out by Ian anyway. Even if it was hell difficulty, it was only non-human races that rapidly increased in difficulty. Humans had a fixed level regardless of difficulty. In addition, Ian's level, which I happened to see earlier, was 45. The level of Mateo's subordinates was on average in the mid-40s. On the other hand, Ian had the sizable advantage of being physically strong and being good at hand-to-hand combat. In other words, he was akin to a bully who could easily defeat these extras, regardless of how many times he was beaten by demons. If Ian protected Mateo even once, the situation would be over. Then all I had to do was step in and deal with the demon. At least, if there was no obstruction. Life at the mansion of Duke Astrian was vastly different from that of any other noble's daughter. Gerald Astrian was awarded the title of Duke for his great achievements in the War of Nice. Considered one of the greatest sword saints, he married the genius wizard Historia, continuing the Astrian family lineage. A girl with light green hair, the second born of a sword saint and a genius wizard. To her, her father, a sword saint, was a being to be followed blindly. House Astrian, rise. Knights. When her father said that over the loudspeaker, no matter how deeply she was dreaming, she had to quickly wake up and make her bed. Merlin Astrian. The eldest daughter. Merlin Astrian. Kaya Astrian. The second daughter. Kaya Astrian. When calling out her name, she had to put second daughter in front of it and moderate her speech. As soon as she woke up, she had to immediately gather in front of the mansion. Let out a powerful shout for 5 seconds. Ha! Conduct the morning routine. House Astrian, run. Yap. Go. Before sunrise, it was customary for them to run in the morning while breathing in the moist air. Did you play with Arwen instead of studying or not? Play. I'm sorry. Roll to the left. Rolling to the left. Roll to the right. Rolling to the right. Do 5 push-ups. How many times? 5 times. 5 times, begin. 1, 2. Kuhuk. She thought it was too much for a 6-year-old kid. Go to bed now. It's mandatory. What the heck? No, she tried to recall the past, but she only had those memories. In addition, she had no contact with the opposite sex, restrictions on snacks, restrictions on play, etc. Gerald's own educational philosophy was that children only grew up righteously when they were raised like soldiers, which had tormented Kaya her entire life. At the very least, Kaya was able to have some breathing room and keep her aristocratic way of speaking due to the generous education policy of her benevolent mother, Historia. Still, in front of her father, she had no choice but to follow his military discipline. Was it because she'd lived such a stressful life? Kaya developed a habit of carefully observing the people she cared about since she had to carefully look into her father's eyes. But now, she only cared about one person. The second-place examinee of M.Riken Academy's Magic Department, Kaya Astrian. As a result of the class placement evaluation, she was assigned to Class A, the highest class, yet her joy at being in Class A was fleeting. The only thing she could think about at the moment was Isaac. After giving it some thought, she decided to keep an eye on Isaac. One day, as soon as the class ended, she went looking for Isaac, and shortly afterward, she noticed him passing by in the distance. He was flocking with Mateo's gang for some reason. It was a commoner group that was frequently mentioned in gossip these past few days. It was clear that Isaac belonged to the same gang, seeing as they all wore their bangs up. Did they say that they were a group rebelling against the aristocracy? I heard that they were arguing with aristocrats. No matter how talented Mateo Jordana, the leader of that gang was, it wouldn't be good to be hated by the aristocracy. It was like a group of mentally immature adolescents. However, why is Sir Isaac in Mateo's gang? A powerful man who reached the realm of an archwizard. Isaac must have had a deep meaning behind this that Kaya herself couldn't fathom. Why did he end up in that gang of bullies? Kaya couldn't help but wonder why. So she decided to tail Isaac. He was completely influenced by Mateo's gang, letting out a cheesy laugh like kekahaha. Is Isaac laughing like a villain? Kaya, who was watching Isaac with her head sticking out from behind the pillar, couldn't keep her mouth shut. She was sure the strength of Mateo's gang couldn't even reach Sir Isaac's toes. It was obvious that at Isaac's level, that kind of gang would look ridiculous. But why? Is there something going on with that Mateo gang? There was only one conclusion that came to mind. Isaac had a deeper meaning for doing this than she could ever come to understand. Otherwise, there's no way Isaac would join such a pathetic group. Isaac was a mysterious man. Now that she'd entered M.Riken Academy, she had to focus on her studies and training, but her head was full of thoughts about Isaac these days. Why is such a strong man hiding his skills? What a spectacular past he must have had, one I can't even begin to imagine. What is the relationship between him and Sylphia, the Emerald Fairy? Isaac didn't answer any of her questions, so there was no way to find out yet. At the very least, she had to find out for herself why he joined a group of third-rate bullies. I have no choice but to closely monitor him. The word stalking came to mind for some reason, but she shook her head, telling herself that it wasn't like that. Chapter 13. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case, 2, Amy Holloway, Ian's childhood friend and one of the heroines. She had a passive bloodline ability, the neutral magic, heart color discernment. Thanks to this, Amy was able to distinguish the colors of other people's heart and perceive their true nature. She could tell whether the other person was lying, what kind of personality the other person had, and what kind of plot the other person was hatching. In other words, she was the #1 contributor who assisted the Holloway family in surviving in an aristocratic society full of intrigue and deception and rising to the ranks of a Count family. Count Holloway cherished his daughter dearly. Because of that, Amy was a girl who grew up on a bed of roses. The person she actually met in her flower garden was the second son of Viscount Fairytale, as well as the main character, Ian Fairytale. In her eyes, Ian was a boy with a good heart. The two quickly became friends, and after working hard, they entered M.Riken Academy as classmates. Yes, at the beginning of the story, Amy's role was vital, Magic Knight of M.Riken. Act 2, Chapter 2, Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case. At this time, Mateo's gang had good timing. On the day of her planned kidnapping, Amy got into a fight with Ian, and Mateo's men approached her at that time and urged her to follow them. She figured out that they were trying to kidnap her, but she followed them anyways. They didn't seem to have any insidious desires, and she wanted Ian to value her more. After all, the man she liked would arrive like a prince on a white stallion and save her, in addition to caring for her more after the event. In other words, it was just plain stupidity. Rather, she was able to see through her opponent's mind, so she easily fell for the tricks of Mateo's gang. As a result, Amy was treated unexpectedly harshly until Ian saved her. She was slapped and kicked, and while Amy was resisting, Mateo's men were in a panic because Ian fought better than they thought he would. Putting Ian in jeopardy because of her own momentary urges and foolish ideas was not what she wanted. It was a scene that didn't sit right with me. So when the childhood friend kidnapping was over, Amy cried and apologized to Ian. Since then, she became a devoted heroine and stopped trolling. Anyways, it would be easy to kidnap her because of how psychologically vulnerable she was. As long as I was here, I wouldn't allow Amy to be treated roughly. Where's Amy? I remembered the after story of Act 2, Chapter 2. Amy said that before Mateo's gang got her, she was mad at Ian and went somewhere. Where was that exactly? Oh, right. Hydrangea Garden. It was a beautifully decorated garden with colorful hydrangeas. Amy would be there on the bench. I was prepared to wander around for a long time, but luckily enough I was able to easily find Amy sitting on a bench in anguish. Let's start with the bangs first, since I'm alone now. I lowered my curly bangs down and walked over to Amy. Suddenly, several emotions crossed my mind. While playing Magic Knight of M.Riken, I went through Amy's route quite a few times. I always liked her bright smile, which seemed to be in full bloom. That's why I was fond of her and had many memories of her. One of the characters I wanted to cherish was Amy. As I stopped in front of Amy, she looked up at me with her beautiful green eyes. She was a white, short-haired woman and had a ribbon shaped like black rabbit ears. She looked like a puppy with her big eyes and had a cute overall appearance. It was the first time we had officially met each other. As expected, she looked like she had question marks all over her face. Amy Holloway, LV. Race. Human elements. Fire danger. Amy Holloway. Amy must be seeing through my intentions with heart color discernment. There was nothing to hide. So, let's make an offer as politely as possible. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to kidnap you. Will you cooperate? Is he crazy? Amy was taken aback by what the man in front of her had just said. She didn't know what to say, so she just stared blankly at him for a while. Silver hair with a slight blue hue and blood-red eyes that looked at Amy. She knew who he was. His name was Isaac. In addition to being judged as grade E in mana, he was ranked last in the class placement evaluation. A man who was at the bottom. He even came from a commoner origin. He was a man famous for such bad things, so she couldn't help but know him. But Amy didn't look down on him. On the contrary, she couldn't understand why the students at this academy were so eager to put others down. Was it because her childhood friend, Ian, who she had a crush on, was also judged with grade E mana and became the subject of humiliation by the other students? The fact angered Amy, but there was nothing she could do. Except for being by Ian's side. Somehow, unlike the other students, Amy felt sympathy for Isaac. But what did such a man say all of a sudden? Did she hear him wrong? Kidnap. Kidnap. Isaac answered clearly as if to confirm. Amy was able to see the color of Isaac's heart thanks to the ever-active, heart color discernment, magic. She saw a bright blue color with a slight orange tinge. It was a color devoid of impure intentions. Therefore, when he said, kidnapping, it didn't seem like it was a real kidnapping. It was only natural, who in their right mind would kidnap in such a manner. It would only be a true kidnapping if he exercised force from the beginning, or tried to deceive and entice her before taking her away. This is the first time we've talked with each other. Why is he showing affection to me? The orange color of the heart meant friendliness, affection, and liking toward Amy. A color usually seen in family or close friends. It was a color that represented goodwill when seen by someone for the first time. It was a color that could turn pink, signifying love between the opposite sexes at any time. But this was the first time Amy had seen Isaac. That means... did he get bewitched without even realizing it? As he passed by, she must have won Isaac's liking for her pure beauty. She was embarrassed, but the corners of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. She covered her cheeks and turned her head to the side. You sinful woman. Oh my gosh, what should I do? She didn't have any special feelings for Isaac, but she felt like her self-esteem went up thanks to him. Amy was upset at Ian, as he had been neglecting her these days. Even the color of his heart had faded. This caused her to feel a strong sense of skepticism about the fact that her self-made appearance, which she had worked hard to maintain, was unable to win Ian's heart. Of course, rationally, she understood that Ian was focused on his training. But he's been too neglectful recently. Is it training, or is it me? She wanted to ask that, but her pride wouldn't allow it. In the first place, she and Ian were not even in a romantic relationship. Revealing this desire for exclusivity was a shortcut to disaster. Yes. She and Ian were just damn childhood friends. She was just his friend, Stupid Ian. Why don't you try to be a little jealous? Amy wanted to get back at Ian. Pooh. Kidnapping, that's funny. It's Isaac, right? Amy smiled brightly as she spoke in a curt tone. Do you want to talk to me somewhere privately? Well. All right. I wish there were delicious refreshments and black tea. I'm pretty picky. I don't know about black tea, but there are some handmade chocolates made with special grade A milk, directly imported from Alo Farm, and cocoa from Dork. Ha! Amy's eyes started glowing with curiosity. Before she knew it, she jumped up and stuck her head out at Isaac. Isaac, startled, reflexively pulled his upper body back. Regardless of his reaction, Amy asked in an excited voice. Gee, what kind of chocolate is that? I've never heard of it, is it good? Her voice trembled with excitement. If it was Amy who was obsessed with sweets, she could confidently say that she had eaten all the sweets in this world. So, the homemade chocolate Isaac mentioned was enough to arouse her curiosity. I have one, so try it. Isaac pulled a small piece of chocolate the size of a finger from his pocket and handed it to Amy. The chocolate was wrapped in paper. Amy exclaimed when she saw the pretty packaging design. Her expression melted as she put the brown chocolate inside her mouth. What do you think? So sweet. After swallowing the chocolate, Amy was immersed in the lingering taste for a while. She soon came to her senses, cleared her throat awkwardly, and nodded. Yes, that's good. It was delicious. Do you have any more chocolates? If you follow me, I'll give you more. All right. Amy covered her expression and gave Isaac a lively smile. I'll be kidnapped. Where do you want to go? Wow, there's a place like this. I brought Amy to a small house somewhere in Josina Forest. Initially, it had been an abandoned warehouse, but it was cleaned under the pretext of kidnapping. One of Mateo's subordinates knew how to handle the wind element, so it was easy to clean off the dust. In Magic Night of M. Raken, there was content related to creating and decorating your own hideout. This abandoned building was one of those places. I guided Amy to a table with refreshments. Sit here, I'll make you some tea. Amy's mind was already focused on the pile of chocolates on the table. After settling her down in a chair, I headed for the kitchen. Even though it was called a kitchen, it was just a small space with one partition. There, I placed a kettle filled with water on top of a scroll engraved with the one-star fire spell, fire generation, magic circle, and started boiling it. But this situation. It's kind of. How should I say this? Isn't it too easy? I thought it would work, but I didn't think I could lure Amy with just one chocolate. Oh, of course, the chocolate I used was an effective item limited to Amy. The chocolates I had prepared in advance were bought with the kidnapping money I received from Mateo. I bought it from the secret shop since it was cheap. The chocolate was originally one of the gift items to increase the favorability of the heroine. The effect was most noticeable for Amy Holloway, who has a sweet tooth. It was a must-buy item if you wanted to see Amy's lover's ending. That was why I knew that Amy would like it. Of course, it was her heart-color discernment skill that played the major part. What are you doing, Amy? I peered through the partition and looked at Amy. She tried to keep her composure while reaching out for the chocolates, but she was stopping herself with her other hand. Isn't it too much? We've been together for so many years, but he always ignores me saying, I have to train. Amy and I had a simple tea party with chocolate and tea. Because I had been playing the game so much, I apparently had a lot to say to Amy. When I started talking, stories came to mind and words just started flowing out. Thanks to that, the atmosphere was never awkward from beginning to end. As if relieved by the chocolate and black tea, Amy kept complaining to me. Of course, it was about Ian. I've been so good to him, that ungrateful bastard. You like Ian, don't you? Uh-huh. I blurted out what I already knew. Amy had left a plethora of clues behind, enough to warrant this much thought. Amy, feeling embarrassed, blushed as expected. No. Not really. Really. Just by looking at it, you like Ian a lot, right? That's not true. It was cute to see her try to deny it. In Ian's position, I had been playing for a long time. I didn't know how many times I'd seen her. Should I have called this affection like that of one towards a daughter? Even though I've never been married. There's no more chocolate. Oh, yes. Chocolate. I ate it all. Sorry, I deliberately changed the topic and Amy replied to it, feeling somewhat guilty. Would you like some more chocolate? I'm not the type to eat that much, but, well, if you were to give me more, wouldn't it be hard to refuse, even out of sincerity? What are you talking about? Just wait a little bit. I'll be right back. Ha! Where are you going? I stood up and headed towards the door. I put it somewhere else. I made something like a mini fridge and stored it there since I'm an ice element user. But it's a bit far away. Why? Wouldn't it be nice to just install a mini refrigerator here or in front? I'm still not good at controlling it. It could cause harm to this house for no reason, so I deliberately kept it far away. She didn't seem entirely convinced. But Amy did not ask any further questions. If she asked, "Can't you use an ice magic scroll?" I was going to reply that I don't have any gel. If she asked why I didn't have gel, I was going to say I was robbed. If she asked me, "Who robbed you?" I was going to say I don't know because it was at night. Well, that was fortunate. It seemed that she wanted to eat more chocolate as soon as possible. "Oh, do you want me to go with you?" "I will follow you." "You're kidnapped. You should wait here." "Poof, that's right, I was supposed to be kidnapped by this evening, right?" Amy laughed. She seemed to think of this as a joke. She probably thought that she was a guest and that being kidnapped was my joke. I would have thought the same. After all, I said the kidnapping was due this evening. It was easier for me if she took it as a joke, since I wanted to make Amy feel comfortable. Today was fun, let's be friends when we get back, Isaac." "Friends, huh? I don't know. Now, Ian, whom you like, will be hurt by Mateo and the demon." I smiled and said, "I'll be back," then left the hideout. Before I knew it, the sky was dyed the color of the sunset. On my way to bring Amy, I placed a sharpened stone at a marked spot in front of a tree in the Josina forest. It was a signal that meant I succeeded in kidnapping Amy. Following that, Ian would receive a letter informing him that Amy had been kidnapped. He'd storm into the abandoned warehouse and begin fighting Mateo's gang. Isn't it still a long time before the demon appears? When the demon appeared, the sky would begin to darken. It would awaken and remain beneath the abandoned warehouse before emerging when it sensed Mateo's dense magic power. So, it was still a long way off. There would be plenty of time to observe the situation in front of the warehouse. All I had to do was kill the demon to prevent a bad ending. Furthermore, if I defeated the demon this time, I would receive the Abyssal Ring as a reward. An item that could read an opponent's mind. I used it to read a number of opponents' minds during battle. In other words, the Abyssal Ring would be of great help in dealing with all kinds of variables in the future. There's no issue with the kidnapping, and nothing particularly unusual comes to mind. I took my time walking toward the abandoned warehouse. The only variable that came to mind would be if the demon appeared early. An example of this would be if Mateo went ahead and used mana before his subordinates. It would be a dangerous situation that hastened the bad ending, but I hoped that wouldn't happen. When playing Magic Knight of M. Bakken, Mateo attacked Ian only after all his men were defeated. Well, this one should be easy. There's no contact with someone meddlesome like Kaya, so there would be no one to interfere. 2 hours ago. Kaya Astrian was wandering around the academy grounds. Where did Isaac go? She couldn't find Isaac. At best, she found Mateo's gang, but everyone was there except for Isaac. In addition, the actions of Mateo's gang today were somehow suspicious. Thanks to Kaya's recent tailing of Isaac, she discovered that they were using an abandoned warehouse in the Josina forest as a hideout. They entered Josina forest and proceeded to the abandoned warehouse as usual, but then they began to carefully look at a tree. Afterward, all but one of Mateo's men headed to the abandoned warehouse. The remaining one turned and left Josina forest and headed for the magic department building, Orphan Hall. Kaya followed him. The man looked around, then he secretly slipped a letter into Ian's locker, and quickly ran away. What is that? Hopefully, it's not a love letter. After Kaya confirmed that the man had left, she took out the letter from Ian's locker and read it. We have Amy Holloway with us. Come to the abandoned warehouse in Josina Forest. Come alone. A hostage. Kaya's hands trembled. They've gone too far. Mateo's gang was notorious. The letter must have been aimed at harassing an aristocrat named Ian Fairytale. But she still couldn't believe they took a hostage. Kaya Astrian. Just in time, Ian appeared at the locker. Puzzled, he spoke to Kaya, who was standing in front of his locker. That's my locker. Are you Ian Fairytale? Look at this. Ian's expression darkened as he read the letter Kaya gave him. Amy. Mateo, that bastard, Mr. Ian. Kaya then made a suggestion to the enraged Ian. She said she would help. The sky was dyed the color of the sunset. After searching Josina Forest, Ian arrived at an abandoned warehouse. Mateo's gang greeted him with giggles. Where is Amy? Ian asked in a raspy voice. He had a training wooden sword in his right hand, but it only seemed ridiculous to Mateo's gang. Tell me right now. This is a warning. Warning. Faya. Behind Ian's back, a barrier formed at the door. It was neutral magic from one of Mateo's gang. Barrier, physical defense specialization, neutral element. 2. Despite being a basic barrier, it specialized in physical defense. No matter how strong he was among his peers, Ian would be unable to easily break through that barrier. Who's talking, you? Mateo's voice weighed down. A grade E, giving a warning. A warning. No, it's more interesting when you have that kind of backbone. Mateo's men approached Ian, but he showed no signs of fear. On the contrary, he appeared disappointed. It was a real warning. It was then. Hush. Qua. Suddenly, a wall of the abandoned warehouse crumbled and a violent wind rushed toward Mateo's gang. Gust, wind element, 4. Aya. Kua. Kuu. Rock wall, rock element, 4. Before the wind magic hit the abandoned warehouse, a rock wall rose around Mateo to protect him. He quickly deployed the rock defense magic, rock wall. His reflexes were like those of a wild animal. However, all of Mateo's gang were unprepared for wind magic and were swept away by gust. They slammed against the wall on the other side, fell to the floor, and then passed out. As the storm subsided, wind generation, wind element, 1, a fierce wind began to encircle the abandoned warehouse at a female student's command. After Mateo dispelled the rock wall, his eyes widened as he looked at the source of the wind magic. The walls of the abandoned warehouse were breached by the gust. A female student with light green pigtails stood nearby, holding a wand with a small green mana stone embedded inside of it. Her hair and skirt fluttering in the wind. Weapons similar to wands increased the power of magic being released, but the complexity of the magic operation made them difficult to handle at a student's level. Only a few first-year students were currently capable of handling such weapons. And a female student of that caliber appeared on the scene. Did my warning sound like a joke? She was the first-year second seat of the magic department, with more power than anyone else here, Kaya Astrian. Chapter 14. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case, 3, why are you? Mateo frowned. He never imagined that Kaya, the second seat, would break in. He had no idea what happened, but under these circumstances, it was clear that she had joined hands with Ian. In other words, she is an enemy. He would fight back, but in the face of Kaya's powerful magic, the outcome of the battle was already set in stone. Mateo, where is Amy? Before Mateo knew it, Ian was approaching him. Mateo, however, only gave him a sidelong glance, as he was wary of Kaya. Kaya's wind, which was dominating the abandoned warehouse, would attack him fiercely if he moved carelessly. A stream of cold sweat ran down Mateo's cheek. "Answer me. Chuck," Ian said menacingly, pointing his wooden sword at Mateo. A man whom he considered insignificant, an aristocrat whom he hated, drew a wooden sword at him. Mateo was furious and his eyes turned red with rage. "How dare you command me?" Drrrr. The moment Mateo was about to cast a rock spell at Ian, wall of ice protruded from the ground, standing between the two. Ice wall, ice element, for Mateo was startled and quickly retreated, believing it was an attack. He turned to face the ice spellcaster. Kaya's wand had formed a light blue magic circle, which she was pointing at Mateo. It was the ice wall spell. "Answer me." The ice wall turned into blue powder and scattered. Even Kaya's wind threatened Mateo. As long as she was there, Mateo couldn't do anything. He couldn't even deal a blow to Ian Fairytale, who was right in front of him. It was a critical situation. Mateo gulped. At that moment, a strange and ominous mana swept over the abandoned warehouse. Kaya, Mateo, and Ian's gazes were drawn to it instinctively. Their survival instincts set off an alarm in their heads. Black mana rose slowly and started concentrating in the middle of the abandoned warehouse. Shaya, Suyu, the black mana let out a weird cry, transforming into a strange two-headed creature. It stood 3 meters tall with gray-brown skin while the eyes protruded from the sides of the cheekbones, which resembled a hammerhead shark. His black-clad body was extremely short, and his legs were unusually long and flaccid. Both his arms were shaped like shark fins, but they were long enough to reach the tips of his toes. In a hoarse voice, the two heads said Shaya and Suyu. The students' expressions became solemn as they stared at the hideous creature. What is that? They immediately guessed the identity of the strange creature. A demon. That was an existence that was considered a natural disaster, a demon. Shaya. Su. The two-headed shark demon roared at Ian and Mateo, and a blue magic circle appeared beneath the demon's feet, followed by a ring of dark water reminiscent of the deep sea. The ring of water instantly transformed into a wave that slammed into the students. Tidal wave, water element, 6, plus black water element, 5, equals black wave, water element, pi woo. Ugh hi. Kaya quickly deployed a ice wall towards herself and Mateo's fainted minions, while Mateo built a rock wall to protect himself from the raging waves. However, their defensive spells were destroyed with a single black wave. Ian, on the other hand, could only concentrate light mana in the sword he had brought with him because he didn't know how to use defensive magic. Ku. The ice wall was successful in protecting those covered by it until the very end, while the rock wall was shattered and failed to serve its purpose. At the same time, Ian's sword skill proved insufficient in driving away the demon's black wave. Ian and Mateo were both swept away by the waves, the impact felt as if something had exploded inside of them. The black wave shattered the walls of the abandoned warehouse with immense force and hurled them into the forest. The two people rolled on the ground and bumped into a tree. As the clear black water settled down, the two men were huddled together like drowning mice. "Are you okay?" Kaya shouted urgently at Ian and Mateo, but had to turn her gaze back to the demon without having time to care for them. To get out of this critical situation, she had to defeat that dangerous being. Shaya. Suyuwu. Once more, a ring of black water rose around the demon. Mateo coughed up blood and water from his mouth. He wanted to avoid the attack, but his body refused to listen. In the face of such powerful magic, even rock wall would be meaningless. It was a futile end. He recalled the plan to kidnap Amy Holloway and defeat Ian in order to threaten the nobility. The small throbbing in his chest that he had faintly felt during the gang meeting deepened. In the midst of a sense of skepticism, Matteo lowered his head. "What are you doing?" A man's voice came from the front, causing Matteo to raise his head. A man with black hair was standing in front of him, holding his wooden sword and glaring at the demon. "Ian Fairytale, if you don't want to be protected by me, get up quickly. It's hard to even protect myself." Matteo couldn't understand Ian's words. Wouldn't it be natural to use him as a shield or to run away? Nobility was such a thing. But instead, he says he will protect me, who was also an enemy. The thought that the second son of Viscount Fairytale came up with such an idea was hard to accept. He didn't even have the strength to protect himself in the first place. But Matteo looked at Ian's back and felt his heart tightening. In fact, he was well aware that not all nobles regarded commoners with contempt. He was simply ignoring it. He couldn't control his rage after witnessing his parents, a commoner and a housekeeper, being abused and bullied in an aristocratic mansion. Matteo stretched out his arm and sent a stream of rock mana. A wall of solid rock formed in front of Ian. "Rock wall, rock element, for you." Startled, Ian turned his head back to stare at Matteo, but he had no time to talk as a second, black wave, hit them. Piu. To protect herself and Matteo's subordinates, Kaya made another, ice wall, and tried countering with, gust. With her magic, she couldn't even break the momentum of the, black wave. A torrent surged towards them like a tsunami with the speed of a cannon. Cook. Kya. The, ice wall, that was protecting Kaya and the, rock wall, that was protecting Ian and Matteo were both smashed once again. The shockwave sent Kaya's body flying backwards. Even though it was water, the pressure felt like a giant sledgehammer. The tree Matteo was leaning on was smashed, and he and Ian were once again swept away by the waves while being tossed around the forest for a while. Ian finally lost consciousness. The last act he managed to do was get up and use his remaining strength to protect Matteo from the evil being. Matteo coughed up blood and looked down at the ground helplessly. His whole body was damp. He didn't even have the strength to raise his head. All he could see was mud. Ugh! Meanwhile, Kaya rose from the floor, trembling. A ring of black water was rising without mercy. The third, black wave, was approaching. The demon didn't even give them a chance to fight back. Soon, the black wave came flying toward Kaya, the unconscious Ian, and Matteo. In that fleeting moment, Kaya knew that she was going to die. Then suddenly, the air began to clear, and a cold, overwhelming basic elemental magic seemingly froze everything on the battlefield. Kaya's eyes widened. Ice generation, ice element, 1, Cherik. In the blink of an eye, the gushing, black wave, froze. The magic lost its momentum and became like a sculpture. Kaya looked around, surprised. Amidst the cold chill, a scene as if time had stopped was reflected in her eyes. "Move aside, Kaya." "Ah." A voice as cold as ice, heavier than a glacier. The feeling of survival overtook Kaya. She quickly turned to face the man behind her. Blood-red eyes and blue-silver hair. A man dressed in a first-year uniform from M.Riken Academy's magic department. Kaya uttered his name in relief. Isaac. No, what's happening? What's going on here? Orpheus the Submerged, LV. 110 race. Demon elements. Darkness, water danger. Hi, as soon as I came to the abandoned warehouse, I couldn't help but freak out. A severely damaged warehouse with a demon emerging from within. The sunset glow had yet to fade from the sky. It was fast, too fast. Why is Kaya here? I had no idea how Kaya got here, but it seemed Orpheus the Submerged sensed her powerful mana and appeared sooner than expected. According to the story, it was supposed to sense Matteo's mana and appear when Ian and Matteo were fighting. Phew, this almost got screwed up, I almost ran out of time. Ian would have fallen if I were even a second slower, and this world would have met a bad ending. The original plan was for me to put on the magic cloak of disguise, defeat the demon, and escape. However, I felt that the situation was going awry, and rushed over without a chance to put on my cloak of disguise. Anyways, we got over the bad ending. Fortunately, Ian and Matteo were lying down in mud together. The fact that the two were together meant that Ian has created a situation where he protected Matteo. Even though things went wrong, somehow it worked out the way I wanted it to. Now it was time to clean up. There was only one thing left to do. Status, name. Isaac LV. 130, gender. Male year. First title. Freshman mana. 35990/36000, mana recovery speed, A. Stamina, A, strength, A+, intelligence, C. Willpower, S. From the moment I decided to fight Orpheus, the hunter trait activated and my level and abilities skyrocketed. It was also possible to freeze his black wave with only ice generation. My level and elemental synergy were superior. I should have no trouble killing him. The ice melted right away. The frozen black wave became dark blue powder and scattered in the air. Shaya. So. Orpheus the submerged glared at me with a perplexed expression. For some reason, I felt a gaze from the direction of Ian and Matteo. I glanced at them sideways and saw Matteo staring at me in disbelief. It seemed he hadn't fainted yet. Matteo had a big mouth, so I needed to keep his mouth shut. Healing magic, do you know how to cast it? Yes. Ah yes. I knew that Kaya could use healing magic, but I deliberately asked and checked. If I made her question how I knew that, I might get a headache for nothing. Matteo's subordinates looked unharmed, so I gestured my chin towards Ian and Matteo. Go over there, and heal them while I defeat the demon. All right. Kaya flew towards them, imbuing herself with wind magic. Next, I approached Orpheus. It would now be an exchange of large-scale magic. I had to make sure the others didn't get swept away. I lightly waved my index finger wrapped in mana and a translucent ice curtain surrounded Kaya, Ian, Matteo, and Matteo's subordinates. This, I heard Kaya's voice. She must have stopped on the way to Ian and Matteo. This one had a much thicker concentration of mana than the simple ice curtain. Ice barrier, ice element, 6, a shield that protected the caster with ice magic. Even if I used 9-star magic, I would be safe as long as I had that ice barrier. Isaac, what are you going to do? I heard Kaya's worried voice. What do you mean? I just have to defeat the demon. Shaya. Suyu. As Orpheus roared, a large blue magic circle formed beneath me. It was a trail of deep blue light, like the color of the sea. Already the waterspout pattern. Orpheus used waterspout whenever his HP fell below 50% and when it dropped below 30%, he applied black water to waterspout as a last resort. Seeing as he was about to use that last resort right away, he seemed scared of me. Before I knew it, water mana began to swirl around me. Its size increased in an instant, and it took the form of a huge whirlwind, a dark dot-colored water tornado, a combination of water and darkness. Water spout, water element, 6, plus black water, water element, 5, equals black dragon ascension, water element, Puu. The water prison instantly tightened without any openings to escape through. The water tornado blew away the abandoned warehouse's roof and continued into the sky. There was no end in sight. If I was swept away by this water tornado, I would soar into the sky while suffocating from the agony of being torn apart by intense water pressure without even a chance to breathe. That was what happened when you got hit by Orpheus' waterspout pattern. Black Dragon Ascension, in particular, was unparalleled in terms of power. A black tornado reached for the sky. Freezing the mana of such a powerful, fast spinning, and large body of water would be difficult to do with a simple, ice generation. However, now that I had a stronger skill than ice generation, it should be fine. I gently stretched out my hand and poured a large amount of mana. The mana then scattered dark blue light and spread out all at once. Black ice, ice element, 5, Cherik. The water tornado froze in an instant. A huge pillar of ice was soaring into the sky. I immediately released the ice mana that froze, Black Dragon Ascension. Crack. As the black ice pillars, which soared like the Tower of Babel, shattered, they turned into a large amount of dark blue powder and flew back down the sky. The Black Dragon Ascension disappeared without a trace. A look of panic was visible on Orpheus' face for the first time. I approached Orpheus and held out my open palm. As cold mana flowed and condensed, a light blue magic circle appeared in front of my right hand. Shaya. So. Orpheus was unable to flee. When I used black ice, the ground on Orpheus' side froze as well. His legs had frozen, rendering him immobile. Let's finish this. I released the condensed cold mana and at the same time, ice rushed in. Frost explosion, ice element, 5, Kwaakaewewak. The exploding ice engulfed Orpheus, tore through the abandoned warehouse, and ran wild through Josina Forest. It grew in size until it resembled a massive iceberg. A cold wind blew wildly. The abandoned warehouse was frozen solid, and a faint cold air flowed as I sighed. On the other hand, the other students were not affected by my magic thanks to the ice barrier. Soon, the block of ice shattered at once, turning into blue powder and scattering in all directions. Shaya, Suyuwu, Orpheus was bleeding purple blood and his entire body was in shambles. Orpheus fell and turned into grey powder before vanishing. Tuck. A small earring fell and tumbled across the ground where Orpheus vanished. I wouldn't have noticed it at first glance, but because I was already aware of the reward, I recognized it without difficulty. It was the abyssal ring. Chapter 15. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case. Interlude. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case, Interlude, congratulations. You've defeated the demon, Orpheus the Submerged, LV-110, and gained EXP. Level up. Your level has increased to 36. You've gained 12 stat points. You have unlocked the achievement. My childhood friend is safe. You have gained an additional 10 bonus stat points. I dropped to one knee and picked up the abyssal ring. It was a thin, rusty, ultramarine blue earring with strange rune-like characters engraved on it. You have obtained the loot, abyssal ring. Abyssal ring, when worn, you can read the other person's psychological state. If worn for 7 days, this item loses all functionality, then even if not worn, you can read the other person's psychological state. Rank. Tier 1. The abyssal ring was an earring that could be worn on the ear's pinna. When I wore this and looked at my opponent, I could see their psychological state through the status window. Originally, it was an item that Ian should take, but it would be much more useful for me to take it than a master fainter. If he ever had to use it in the first place, I could step in and solve it. I had no intention of giving Ian any loot, unless it was absolutely necessary for the sake of the story, or if it was something I could spare. I turned to face Ian and Mateo as I cleared the ice that surrounded the abandoned warehouse. Kaya stared at me in awe as she cast her healing magic on them. For definitive treatment, they would need to visit priests specializing in healing magic, or be taken to the hospital. Kaya's magic was only for first aid. Ian, on the other hand, had a monster-like resilience due to his light element constitution. Kaya's magic would be sufficient to heal him. Now that things had calmed down, I thought of testing the abyssal ring. I clipped the ultramarine blue earring on my right earlobe. It shrank to fit the size of my earlobe and gave off a cold, metallic sensation. You have learned the passive skill, psychological insight, 7. I gained a passive skill that activated on the condition that I was wearing the abyssal ring, but if I wore this earring for 7 days, the condition would cease to exist. I covered my ear with my right hand so that neither Kaya nor Mateo, who were staring at me, would notice. Then I looked at Ian, who had fainted first. Ian Fairytale, LV. Race. Human element. Light, fire danger. Psychology. As expected, a new psychology section was added to the status window. Because Ian was unconscious, it appeared to be empty. Mateo Jordana, LV. Race. Human elements. Rock danger. Psychology. Confused by the fact that you are strong. Mateo was staring at me. It was the first time I had seen someone's face filled with surprise, doubt, and admiration. Among them, doubt seemed to be the most prevalent. Mateo's level increased by 1 too. It was most likely due to the Team EXP. Kaya Estrian, LV. Race. Human elements. Wind, ice danger. Psychology. In awe of you. Awe, what? Kaya looked like an ardent believer looking at the cult leader. Well, she's leveled up by 1 too. Phew, know that you're stronger because of me. I removed the abyssal ring from my ear and put it in my pocket. From tomorrow on, it would be natural to wear this as a normal accessory. I then proceeded to walk toward Kaya, Ian, and Mateo. Mateo had a confused expression on his face as he looked at me. Because of the shock, he seemed to be unable to speak. Well, I didn't really have anything to say to him. Kaya. Yes, Sir Isaac. When I stopped in front of Kaya and started talking to her, I was taken aback. Looking up close, her eyes shined so brightly, to the point of being overwhelming. First of all, I'd like to ask Kaya something. Are you here to help Ian? Yes, Sir Isaac, do you know Amy Holloway? I heard she was kidnapped, I kept her someplace safe. I knew it. Kaya exclaimed as if she had predicted this. Her pupils were still shining in an overwhelming manner. I'll handle the aftermath. I'm going to take these guys to the hospital, get them treated, and tell them to keep their mouths shut. I didn't say anything, but she knew exactly what I wanted. For some reason, I didn't dislike this sensation. The only thing that made me feel burdened right now was her longing gaze, which was not in the least bit ashamed. As I felt a tickle in my heart, a small smile crept across my lips. Thank you. When I said such heartfelt words, the corners of Kaya's mouth twitched violently and her lips started trembling. It was the expression she made when someone she admired complimented her. I'm actually just a nobody, yet you look at me like that. What can I say? I'm kind of flattered. And keep quiet about the appearance of the demon this time. Yes. Why is that? I see. I was about to explain the reason for this ruse, but when she said she knew right away, I was left speechless. I wasn't sure what kind of thought process was involved, but it didn't matter as long as she did what I wanted. It brought back memories of the time I played Magic Knight of M. Raken. Soon, Mateo's subordinates would wake up and they would help Mateo and head to the hospital. It was the end of that situation. I gave Kaya a nod and began moving to where I had kidnapped Amy. Throughout the walk, I could feel Kaya's burdening gaze as well as Mateo's suspicious gaze. I purposefully avoided looking back and hurried my steps. As the sun set, the sky began to darken. The transition from sunset to ultramarine blue was stunning. I brought you more chocolate. Oh. You're here. Amy jumped out of her seat and rushed to me like a rabbit when I arrived at the hideout. When she asked for chocolate, her eyes glowed like those of a Pomeranian. It's a little later than I thought. But isn't it cold outside? I feel chilly for some reason, don't you? Amy inquired, her voice full of worries. It appeared to be because of me constantly emitting cold air while fighting the Orpheus the Submerged. I scratched my cheek and laughed awkwardly. I don't want you catching a cold. What are you doing? Amy suddenly extended her hand to me, and a faint flame appeared in front of her outstretched hand. Crackle. Fire generation, fire element, 1, oh, it's warm. Ah, thank you. I'm the one who's thankful. Today was so much fun, and the chocolate was delicious too. By the way, Isaac, what's your answer? Answer. I asked you to be friends. Come to think of it, I didn't properly answer her request to be friends before I left. But she was about to hear it all from Ian. She should be able to figure out why I brought her here pretty quickly. I wasn't sure how she would react then. Still, why do I have to avoid it now? Friend. That's good. Hee hee. Amy smiled brightly while basking in the warmth of the flames. Her smile was sincere, like a blooming flower. Magic Night of M. Raken. Act 2, Chapter 2, The Childhood Friend Kidnapping Case was over. After escorting Amy out of Josina Forest, we parted ways in front of the dormitory. She belonged to Briggs Hall, which housed students from the middle and lower classes. I decided not to eat dinner. Since I was enjoying refreshments with Amy, I wasn't that hungry. In the dark night, I went to a deserted corner of the garden to check my potential. Potential, stat points. 22. Growth rate, physical training efficiency, C. 26 out of 100, up, magic training efficiency, C+. 33 out of 100, up, learning efficiency, D. 12 out of 100, up. Elemental resistance, fire resistance, E. 0 out of 100, up, water resistance, D. 6 out of 100, up, ice resistance, C. 24/100, up, lightning resistance, C. 29 out of 100, up, rock resistance, E. 2 out of 100, up, wind resistance, D. 13 out of 100, up, neutral magic resistance, D. 8 out of 100, up. Versus race combat power, versus human combat power, E. 4 out of 100, up, versus other races combat power, E. 1 out of 100, up, versus heavenly beings combat power, E. 0 out of 100, up, versus demon combat power, S. 100 out of 100, max, my level increased by 6, and I got a total of 22 stat points. If it's 22, my first goal was to master Frost Explosion. In other words, I had already decided where I would invest my stat points. I poured all 22 stat points into Magic Training Efficiency. Potential, Magic Training Efficiency, has improved from C+ to B+. Grade B+. If it was grade B+, it was in the realm of a genius. Even though Isaac's own potential and abilities were limited, my future growth rate would be interesting to watch. Following that, I practiced my magic and headed to the physical training room. The students from the night department greeted me as if they had been awaiting my arrival. And then all hell broke loose. The next day, I met Amy while I was walking down the street. I was nervous about what I would hear for a moment, but unexpectedly, she greeted me with a wide smile. Amy Holloway, Psychology. Feels friendly towards you. She appeared to be very happy. She said Ian came to her yesterday and hugged her tightly and said he was worried. Embarrassed by the sudden hug, she asked why, and Ian replied that he was worried that something happened because he didn't see her today. He must have stuttered quite a bit. But Amy was in such a good mood that she just let it go. Besides, she must have been happy that the color of Ian's heart had brightened again. So Amy's on the lover's route. If you rescued the kidnapped Amy during the childhood friend kidnapping case, you would have two choices. Pat the shoulder, and hug. If you selected hug, you would follow Amy's lover's route. Congratulations, Amy. Your wedding will be really touching. And, judging by the fact that she didn't mention anything about Ian being injured, it appeared that he had been healed immediately by Kaya's healing magic. To avoid worrying Amy, he must have gone to the dormitory and changed his clothes. He didn't seem to have told Amy about his confrontation with Mateo, let alone about me. If I thought about how he didn't show much of a reaction to me in the classroom earlier, it seemed that Kaya and Mateo had agreed to keep quiet about me. That's highly commendable, Kaya. What's with this earring? Did you buy a new one? It suits you well. It wasn't until I finished talking about Ian that Amy noticed the abyssal ring on my right earlobe. I had to wear it for a week, but I was glad that it looked good on me. Following that, Mateo called me. To be more specific, the entire gang, including myself, was summoned. After being hit by Kaya's wind magic, Mateo's subordinates had no memory of the previous events. It was all due to them losing consciousness. When they awoke to find the abandoned warehouse completely destroyed, they assumed it was all Kaya's fault. Mateo must have affirmed their assumption. As soon as they woke up, they supported Mateo and headed to the hospital. There, Mateo received professional healing magic and was finally able to move. Of course, he was not completely healed. Mateo had bandages wrapped around his arms and torso. He appeared to be in pain, seeing as he flinched every time he moved his arm, but he seemed able to move his body without much trouble. At an alley behind the academy building, Mateo bowed his head and apologized to us. I'm sorry. From now on, I am going to live honestly and compete with my skills. Thank you for going along with my orders. In the future, I just want all of you to be my friends. The subordinates patted Mateo on the shoulder without saying anything, as if they thought he had been subdued by Kaya. Although there were twists and turns, things progressed similarly to the story. I was greatly relieved. Mateo Jordana, Psychology. Feels grateful to you. You feel grateful, huh, child? Mateo sent out all his other men, leaving us alone. We went to the garden, sat under a tree, and started drinking. Of course, he was the one who bought it. 'Cause I didn't even have a penny. I watched everything. The scene of you defeating the demon, why are you talking so respectfully? You were pretending to be weak on purpose, just speak normally. It's awkward. How dare I wasn't sure what Kaya said, but Mateo seemed to have succumbed to her misunderstanding. I'll get angry if you don't. I got it, Mateo reluctantly spoke informally again. Kaya had a habit of using respectful words with everyone, so I didn't say anything, but it was awkward when a guy who had always spoken informally suddenly used honorifics. It was difficult for me to bear. Thank you. Without you, I would have died there. Not just me, but the guys I just sent there too. Think of it as the payment for the meals. I guess my life costs as much as food. Mateo burst out laughing, as if dumbfounded. He was always serious, so when he smiled, it felt awkward. To that extent, he seemed to think that the balance payment was excessively unbalanced. I apologized to Ian. Is that so? I understood after talking to him. I was on the wrong track. Just as the nobles looked down on the commoners, I, a commoner, was also treating them harshly. I thought that was the way to resist the nobles. I wasn't interested in whatever realizations Mateo had. When he heard Ian's main character philosophy or beliefs, and reflected on himself, it was obvious that he was talking about something like that. Once I knew things were going well, my mind was full of plans for the next one. Now's the problem. Act 2, Chapter 3, Practical Training, and Act 2, Chapter 4, Ant Legion. I was already planning how to deal with the ant demon Garcia the Hermit, who appeared in Act 2, Chapter 4. Garcia the Hermit was level 140, and his ant army had excellent collective intelligence and presents a carcinogenic evil element. There was a reason why the already difficult hell difficulty was rapidly increasing. It was because, as soon as he manifested, he stored up his strength in the Tantak underground cave, in the academy grounds. Then, 2 weeks later, with a full power up, he showed up in front of Ian in the middle of the practical training. After completing Act 2, Scene 4, you could explore the underground cave of Tantak. Zephyrim, a rare mana remnant, could be found there. It was simple to carry because it had solidified into a magic stone. Zephyrim was created as a result of Garzia repeatedly discharging and rebuilding mana while accumulating power. It was primarily used for accessory or weapon forging and was very profitable. In other words, my strategy was to enter Tantak Cave first, defeat Garzia the Hermit, who was hoarding strength, and collect Zephyrim. I wasn't sure if it would work out. In Magic Knight of M. Raken, it was impossible to explore the Tantak underground cave ahead of time. It was uncharted territory. But, what if it works out? I could prevent a bad ending in advance, and avoid being a beggar. It was just a brief escape at most. All I would have was a lot of gels. Just imagining it made me feel good. Feeling confident that I would win the lottery, I thought about what to do with my earnings. So I'm going to see what Ian does in the future. This bastard hasn't finished talking yet. Inside Class A's classroom. Even in class, Kaya Astrian couldn't stop thinking about Isaac. Throughout the day, she had been experiencing an overwhelming sensation of excitement. Earlier, while hiding behind a tree, she secretly overheard the conversation between Isaac and Mateo, so she was becoming even more addicted to the Isaac drug. How many achievements had Isaac made in this disturbance alone? He joined Mateo's gang and saved Amy Holloway from being in danger. He defeated the dangerous demon. He even reformed Mateo. After all, a person who reached the realm of an arch-wizard was truly amazing. As a prospective wizard, he was a person she couldn't help but admire. How can you be so amazing, Sir Isaac? Isaac was a very different person from Kaya, who could only study or train magic. The fact that they were classmates of the same generation, the same academy, the same department, and peers excited her. As Isaac had asked her to do the day before, Kaya properly informed Mateo. Isaac is a man who has reached the realm of an arch-wizard, and he is pretending to be weak because he has a meaning deeper than the abyss and broader than the open sea. Noel Dem at that time, right after defeating the demon, she was so engrossed in the Isaac drug that she expressed it a bit. She instructed him to keep the appearance of the demon a secret and to take it with him to the grave. Everything had a purpose. In fact, Isaac had to have a deep and profound meaning for everything since he was in such a position to protect the students. She warned him not to say anything about Isaac, and that if he did, he would not be let go. She faked a story and told Ian that she and Mateo worked together to catch the demon somehow. Amy was safe, so she intervened to keep this matter a secret. By the way, did Ian Fairytale have the body of a human? It was hard to believe that he was healed with nothing but Kaya's own healing magic. Of course, depending on their constitution, some people have exceptional resilience. It's also possible that he managed to avoid the demon's attack. Kaya decided not to think too hard about it. But as an ordinary person, you would only see a demon once in a lifetime. It's a bit strange that so many of them appeared in such a short period of time. Since arriving at the academy, she had encountered demons twice. If the rumor about a demon appearing during the class placement evaluation was true, that meant the demons had already appeared 3 times in M. Raken Academy. The demons appeared so rarely that they were regarded simply as a natural disaster. The fact that they appeared at the academy so frequently was a very strange thing. And whenever the demons appeared, Isaac defeated them. The reason Isaac came to this academy, is it related to the demons? Was there some huge secret hidden in the M. Raken Academy? Isaac is a genius among geniuses who has reached the realm of an arch-wizard, so isn't it because he already knew the secret that he infiltrated this academy? It was a terrifying thought. In other words, didn't that mean that there was a great danger lurking in the academy, to the point where an important figure like Isaac had to step in? Ah, no way. Kaya swallowed her saliva as the ridiculous thought ran through her head. Chapter 16. Ant Cave, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Ant Cave, 1, it's 2000 gels. I ended up taking a high-interest loan from the Academy Bank, with a monthly interest rate of 5%, or 100 gels. The interest rate was vicious, but it wasn't fatal because the amount of the loan itself was small. Typically, the loan screening criteria included an individual's mana, grades, and credit. Because my mana was only grade E, my loan amount was limited to 2000 gels, and I could only choose a loan product with a very high interest rate. Not to mention the fact that there was nothing to use as collateral. Isn't it almost like an illegal loan shark? The institution that monopolized the financial sector under the Academy was so frightening. Still, I believed it was an unavoidable choice. Pride didn't allow me to ask Mateo for food while condescendingly saying, "I saved your life." But if my plan worked, I would be able to pay off my debt soon, and I wouldn't have to worry about my grades being penalized from taking out a loan. It was unclear whether the plan would work, so it felt like a gamble, but anyway, now was the time to eat well and get stronger. Status, name. Isaac LV. Gender. Male year. First title. Freshman mana. 260/400, mana recovery speed, D+, stamina, C. Strength, C. Intelligence, C. Willpower, B, potential. Details. Combat skills, Elemental Series 1. Ice, Elemental Firepower, C, Elemental Efficiency, C, Elemental Synergy, C+, Elemental Series 2, Locked, Own Skills, Active, 1, Ice Generation, C, /5, Black Ice, C. 2, Ice Curtain, C+, 1, Cold Divergence, C+, 1, Basic Protection Magic, E, Passive, 7, Psychological Insight Skill Tree. Details. Nice. During a dark evening. In a deserted corner of the garden, the 4-star Ice Magic, Frostfire, was engraved on a parchment. I had definitely memorized it by now. Frostfire, 4, obtainable. Emits powerful cold air in the form of flames. Type. Active skill, all, purpose, elements. Ice acquisition conditions. LV 35, O, Ice Generation, Grade C, O, Cold Divergence, Grade C+, O, Ice, Elemental Firepower, Grade C, O, Ice, Elemental Efficiency, Grade C, O, Trigger conditions. None. In order to use magic, you had to first memorize the shape of the magic circle. Magic, with the exception of a basic 1-star spell, did not simply activate by pouring out mana into the air. You had to use your mind to direct the flow of mana in the form of a magic circle. When the unique trait, Hunter, activated, I felt as if my body had already mastered the magic circle, allowing me to use magic naturally. With the body of the ordinary Isaac, I had to follow the standard procedure. I stretched out my right hand with my palm facing the sky and formed the ice mana into the shape of a magic circle. A light blue magic circle formed on the palm of my hand. Above it, the faint cold and light blue mana took the form of a flame, creating a Frostfire. Oh! You have learned the ice spell, Frostfire, 4. It's done, it's done. A cold, faintly burning mana flower. I could feel my mana constantly being depleted. I grabbed my right arm with my left hand after extending my hand with the Frostfire outwards, then continued pouring mana in. Frostfire, Ice Element, 4, Wahaha. The faint cold and light blue mana blazed forward like flames. Its range was short, but that was to be expected due to my grade D proficiency. Envied, wow, is it because of the fact I finally had a worthy attack spell? My mouth sprang open with an exclamation. I clenched my fists to extinguish the faintly blazing, frost fire, and closed my eyes tightly. My entire body trembled. I knew this feeling. This overwhelming feeling. It was a sense of accomplishment. Kehi. There was still a long way to go. Next up is, ice wall, dot. Ice wall, 4, obtainable. It creates a solid wall of ice. Type. Active skill, defensive, elements. Ice acquisition conditions. LV30, O, ice generation, grade C, O, cold divergence, grade C, O, ice, elemental firepower, grade C, O, ice, elemental efficiency, grade C, O. The sensation of using ice wall was ingrained into my body. However, just a few days ago, I had difficulty using ice wall. It took a lot of mana control to create a solid ice wall. But now, it somehow seemed possible. I closed my eyes and released ice mana, while imagining a wall forming in front of me. Creak as I moved my hand a little, I heard a sound as if something thick were protruding from the ground. And when I finally opened my eyes, my vision was blocked by a wall of ice. You have learned the ice spell, Ice Wall, 4, dot. Ice Wall, Ice Element, 4, Ice Wall. It was a success. I finally got a proper defense. As expected, after my magic training efficiency became B+, I could clearly feel my growth rate accelerate. Cool. The difficult training moments passed like a panorama. Ha ha ha. A sense of accomplishment surged up like a volcano. I raised my fist into the air with joy. It was almost like Manny Pacquiao. Translator note. Emmanuel Dapadran Pacquiao Sr. CLH is a Filipino politician and former professional boxer. Nicknamed Pac-Man, he is regarded as one of the greatest professional boxers of all time. Act 2, Chapter 3, Practical training would start 1 week and 4 days from now. Garcia, the ant demon, would begin to stockpile strength 2 weeks before the practical training. By now, Garcia should be nestled in Tantak Cave, and Zephyrim, which were created from the remnants of his mana, must have formed. For reference, there weren't many Zephyrims I could get by visiting the Tantak underground cave once Act 2, Chapter 4 ended. The reason for that was because many Zephyrim would lose their function as a result of mana overload. In other words, if I could go to Tantak Cave ahead of time, there was a good chance I could get a lot of hot, high-quality Zephyrim. In other words, the current time was best. It just so happened that tomorrow was a weekend. After I finished all of my classes today, I would board a carriage and head to the Tantak Cave. It would take 5 hours by carriage to get there, so after I defeat Garcia, I guess I had to spend the night homeless. I would rather leave tomorrow, settle things, and then return right away, but it would be more efficient to set aside a day to invest in stats and train. Did I pack all my stuff? Inside Class D's classroom. The classroom was empty since all the students had left after the class ended. I sat in the middle seat, writing a list of luggage on parchment and checking it off one by one. Food like water and bread, as well as a portable light lamp. Camping equipment such as simple tents and chairs, blankets, pillows, and so on. I've got an extra just in case. I also packed 2 magic pouches I had bought to store Zephyrim. All of them were purchased by emptying the gel that I had borrowed. It's perfect. No problem. I could start right away now. The sky was gradually turning red. By the time I arrived at the Tantak Cave, it would be dark. I gathered my belongings, including the magic pouch, and proceeded to the carriage stop to board one of the carriages. There were no horses. Here, the horse of the carriage was not a literal horse, but a magic horse. Its shape was similar to the carriage I knew, but the carriage was operated by the coachman's mana. It moved if you infuse magic into the handle. I wasn't sure what the exact principle behind it was, as it wasn't mentioned in the official setting. But since it was a game setting, I would just move on. Where are you going? The Tantak Cave. Ha! If you go there right now. It's going to be pretty late at night, right? There are no accommodation facilities nearby. You know that, right? It's all right, please go there. I got into the carriage and sat in a chair. Are you really okay? Muttered the coachman as he began driving the carriage. You're so worried even though I'm perfectly okay. The insides of the carriage squeaked as it moved. In this case, it would be better to take a nap and relieve my fatigue. I closed my eyes and fell asleep quietly. 20 minutes before Isaac's departure. Class A had ended and Kaya had arrived at Class D's door. The secret of M. Riken Academy, a hideous conspiracy theory that recently floated in her mind. She thought about how to get to the bottom of this. If there really was a dangerous secret lurking in the academy, it was a matter of great concern not only for the students, but also for her own safety. She finally came to a decision. Let's follow Isaac, who she believed was her only lead. For some reason, it seemed to be no different from her previous behavior as she appeared to be stalking the person she admired. But Kaya couldn't help it, so she justified her action to herself. From the classroom in which the students had departed, Kaya peered out from behind the open door into the classroom. In the middle seat, Isaac was alone. He appeared to be scribbling something on a parchment. What is he doing? Study. No, I don't think he's studying. A question mark floated above Kaya's head. Oh. When Isaac stood up, Kaya freaked out and bolted. Just as she did, there happened to be a big box full of cleaning supplies in the hallway. So she decided to hide in it. She only poked her head out to the side of the cleaning kit. Isaac was making his way out of the Class D classroom and down the hallway. Now let's follow him like an assassin. Stealthily. Kaya followed Isaac in the shadows. Swoosh, her body hidden in place. Isaac made his way to the carriage stop. Kaya, who was hiding behind the tree with her head slightly poking up, tilted her head. A carriage. Isaac climbed into the carriage and began to depart. The sky was a bright yellow. It was too late to take a carriage and depart. Where is Isaac going at this hour? It was unusual. Should I go after him or not? After much thought, Kaya decided to go after him. She quickly boarded the new carriage after arriving at the carriage stop. Excuse me, guest. You have to tell me where you're going first, please follow that carriage. Don't let them notice us. The coachman tilted his head. Was it an issue between students? Without further ado, he started driving the carriage. After all, he was in a position where he only needed to get paid. The sun was setting slowly in the sky. Footnotes. Chapter 17. Ant Cave, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Ant Cave, 2, it was late at night. When I got off the carriage, the sight of a gorge entered my eyes. It was dark, with only the moonlight shining through, but even then, it was a magnificent sight that was difficult to believe, given that it was only 4 hours away from the academy. The entrance to Tantak Cave was right in front of me. It appeared to be a typical cave entrance, but once you entered, a pitch-black path leading downhill would appear. Student, will you really be okay? The coachman inquired, his voice worried. Really, I'm okay. Even so, I couldn't be rude to someone who was worried about me. With a light smile, I nodded, it's all right. Get home safe. Students are. After receiving the payment I had given him, the coachman began driving the carriage back. Before I knew it, I had arrived. After taking a deep breath, I entered the cave entrance. It's really dark. I took out a luminescent lamp from my magic pouch. The handy portable lamp radiated light which helped illuminate the surrounding landscape. Portable luminous lamp, a lamp containing glowstone. It is convenient to carry. Rank. Tier 9 flapping. Yuwak. As I shone the luminous lamp at the ceiling, the hanging bats flailed their wings all at once from the light. My heart felt like it was going to burst. I'm not good with scary things. Ha, I'm so scared. Putting my hand on my chest, I took a deep breath. Even if I had arrived during the day, it would have been dark. I shouldn't be regretful for coming here at this time, it was my choice after all. Anyway, it wouldn't always be dark and scary. If I went in deeper, there would be glowstones made from Garzia's mana to mark the way. Let's hold out until then. After all, it's not like there are any ghosts. I slowly moved forward. As I walked, a downhill road appeared. It was a gentle slope. If I went all the way down from here, I would arrive at an underground labyrinth. I had everything about the underground labyrinth memorized by heart. This much was only natural as I was a veteran. Magic Knight of M. Raken. Player. Just to be sure that I didn't slip and fall, I began to carefully descend downhill. But really. It's so scary when it's dark. The illumination lamp had a limited range. Beyond that range, it was pitch black darkness. Suddenly, I imagined the terrifyingly frightening face of a ghost appearing from the darkness in my mind. If that happened, I would undoubtedly pass out. Yes, I would pass out. I swallowed my saliva. I moved my feet quietly and silently in the midst of the tension that seemed like it would make my heart stop. It was then. Jaya. Kwadang. Behind me, an ear-piercing scream echoed, followed by the sound of collapsing rock. In an instant, my heart sank. I was on the verge of passing out, but I managed to keep my composure. It was just a woman's scream. It couldn't be a ghost. I turned around and began running uphill toward the cave's entrance. After climbing all the way uphill, I saw broken stones all around the cave's entrance. Then, as I shone the luminescent lamp in front of me, a familiar figure of a female student sitting in the middle of the cave came into view. The female student with light green pigtails, dressed in the same M. Raken Academy uniform as mine, was trembling. She looked at me, then turned her head to the side, wiping away her tears. Kaya Estrian, LV. Race. Human elements. Wind, ice danger. Psychology. Ashamed to show you such an embarrassing sight. Why is Kaya here? Kaya. Sir Isaac. Anyway, she's the one who just screamed, right? Or did Garzia's henchman show up? I dashed over to Kaya, knelt down on one knee, and looked her in the eyes. What startled you so much? Maybe you ran into a giant ant, bat, huh? Because of the bats. I was scared, I see. I'm sorry, Kaya apologized in a dejected tone. But it wasn't necessary to apologize. Anyway, as long as it wasn't a dangerous problem, it was fine. It's okay. But why did you follow me? Why is Kaya here? Seeing that she appeared at this time, it seemed she was following me. And her startled reaction made it obvious. Why? I was aware of her admiration for me, but was Kaya the type of person who stalked the person she admired? I, too, have a reason for being here. You came after me. Ugh, that's. I can't tell you why. Maybe I was seeing a side of Kaya I hadn't seen before. If that was the reason she didn't want to talk about it, it was okay. I didn't intend to force her to speak right away. Can you get up? When I reached out my hand, Kaya, who was hiding her expression the entire time, suddenly looked at me blankly. Kaya Estrian, psychology. Feels that your sociable attitude is awkward. Oh right. I had been treating Kaya with a cold attitude, deliberately pretending to be strong, and acting as if I had shown my true colors. First of all, I was in a situation where I couldn't reveal my actual identity to Kaya. It was because I was afraid of the consequences if she had discovered that I was actually weak. It was necessary to maintain the usual, strong but revealing attitude so as not to raise unnecessary doubts. "Ha," I sighed. "You didn't come to disturb me, did you?" I inquired in a cynical tone. Only then did Kaya relax her suspicious expression and looked at me with a mix of admiration and fear. "Ah, no. No way." Kaya jumped to her feet and stood immediately as though her body fully recalled her father's military discipline. I ignored her and started walking downhill again. Kaya chased after me. "By the way, Sir Isaac, why are you here?" I didn't have to hide my purpose, so I decided to answer honestly, to defeat a demon. "Is that so?" Kaya responded as if she had suspected as much. "So there was a demon here, you should not have come to this place. Kaya would be in danger if she stayed here." Garcia, even while not being at full strength, was at a higher level than Kaya. "No, I will help too." Kaya came to my side and she looked at me with a determined expression. "To protect the academy." Kaya Astrian, psychology. Feels that it is cool to protect the peace of the academy. What are you imagining? I wasn't sure what it was, but I could tell she had a vivid imagination. She ventures into the darkness behind the academy and defeats the forces of evil in order to protect the students. I wondered if she was imagining something like this. On second thought, it might not be bad to have Kaya here. Beyond the downhill road in this darkness was uncharted territory. In other words, I was unable to deal with all variables. In addition, Kaya's abilities were also exceptional. Even if unforeseen circumstances were to arise, she had the ability to cover my back. If Garcia attacked, I would simply have to defend her. "Do as you please," I replied with a feeling of reluctant acceptance. Kaya's face lit up. She nodded and returned her gaze forward. Kaya took out a wand encrusted with a green magic stone and went on high alert. She seemed reliable. We walked downhill for 20 minutes, relying on the light from the luminescent lamp. Beyond the downhill path came the dim passage. It was the entrance to the underground labyrinth. Where are we? An underground labyrinth. It's easy to get lost, so follow me closely. Oh, yes. I hurried my steps right away as Kaya followed me. As soon as we entered the underground labyrinth, light brown glowstones arranged in an orderly fashion on the walls came into view. They were created using Garcia's rock magic to easily distinguish the path. This made it possible to discern the surroundings without the use of a luminous lamp. I placed a cloth over the luminous lamp and placed it in the magic pouch. I held my breath and walked through the maze. Whenever we had to decide which direction to take, before Kaya could hesitate, I quickly picked a path and moved on. After all, the structure was no different from when I played Magic Knight of M. Raken. I could easily reach the center. "Sir Isaac." Kaya abruptly stopped and called my name. "I've been feeling this way since earlier, but how do you know the path so well?" "Ha! Wait a minute. Am I being suspected right now?" I glanced at Kaya and opened her status window. Kaya Astrian, psychology. Feels doubtful if you have a background where you were once part of the demons and then decided to fight against the demons. What kind of scenario was this again? Because of her rich imagination, Kaya comes up with bizarre ideas all the time. This could quickly result in a difficult manage situation. It had to be answered unequivocally. What should I say? Well. Oh, let's make it up like this. I'm just sensing the demon's mana and finding a way. I've felt the mana since the beginning, ever since I was at the academy. I said that, but it was really just nonsense. How could someone sense mana from this underground cave all the way at the academy? In the first place, the range mana could be sensed was so damn small. It was a very silly thing. However, as expected, Kaya seemed to believe it. Wow, she appeared surprised. I couldn't sense anything. Is this the mana perception of an archwizard? Kaya exclaimed in awe, her mouth wide open. As expected, she was too simple-minded. You'll be able to feel it gradually. Kaya and I started moving again. She looked at me for a while with a twinkling gaze. Ah, those glistening eyes. It's so dazzling, like starlight, so it's very daunting. It was then. Sakak. The sound of something sharp scratching, rocks being flung, and antennae rubbing against each other. Kaya and I both came to a halt and looked ahead. Sakak. Garcia had a lot of minions, also known as disaster ants, one of the factors that dramatically increased the difficulty of Act 2, Chapter 4. Sakak. Disaster ants have excellent collective intelligence, a cancer to play against that forced the player with all kinds of strategies and tactics. When I first played Hell difficulty, I had a hard time because of them. If Garcia was hiding here, it was only natural that a legion of disaster ants were guarding this labyrinth. In this underground cave, there could be up to 300 of them. Sakak. In front of me, through the darkness, a large insect jumped out. Scuttling with its antennae flickering, a large black ant appeared while closing and opening its sharp pincers at the front of its mouth repeatedly. Its wide-open eyes emanated a red glow. It was a disaster ant. Disaster ant, LV. Race. Demon elements. Darkness, rock danger. Upper, intermediate psychology. Wants to kill you, the intruder. What is that? Kaya asked, startled by the giant insect. Fortunately, there was only one disaster ant in front of us. He appeared to be patrolling the area. It was dangerous when disaster ants flocked together. I wasn't sure what kind of strategy they would use to put pressure on me, despite the fact that I was a demon-limited hunter. The demon has been recognized as an enemy. The unique trait, Hunter, is activated. The level and stats are temporarily greatly enhanced. The skill tree temporarily becomes +10. Then, there was only one way. As I took a step forward, I extended my hand to Kaya and poured out my mana. A thin curtain was draped around her. It was a translucent film of ice with beautiful ice crystals floating around it. Ice barrier, ice element, 6, Isaac, what are you going to do? Sakak. The disaster ant took off quickly, running on all 6 of its legs. At the same time, I bent one knee and placed my right hand on the floor. Freeze the entire labyrinth. And then I released my ice mana. Frost wave, ice element, 6, Cherik. The massive flow of cold air from my hands engulfed the entire underground labyrinth in an instant, thoroughly freezing the disaster ants and turning them into ice statues. In an instant, the entire cave was transformed into a cold ice cave, as if it had always been like that. Ha! A cold chill escaped my lungs. If there was a legion of ants with excellent collective intelligence, all I had to do was freeze them all before they could launch their tactics. Chapter 18. Ant Cave, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Ant Cave, 3, that's amazing, I heard Kaya's admiring voice from next to me. The trait, Hunter, was active, making my current level 136. With each skill's proficiency at S.class, Kaya couldn't be compared to me. I released the ice barrier that was protecting Kaya. You're amazing, Sir Isaac. Let's go. I started walking forward, unbothered. At the same time, the unique trait, Hunter, was deactivated, and my body became heavy. My body had reverted to its original form. When viewed up close, the frozen disaster ants appeared even more menacing. Seriously, it looked disgusting. Kaya followed behind me. Even on the icy floor, she walked smoothly. If I unfroze the disaster ants I just met, they would die, but the ones further away would remain frozen. In other words, I couldn't recklessly unfreeze the frozen cave. I turned to face Kaya as soon as I heard her breathing. She pretended to be fine with her arms crossed, but she seemed to be feeling cold. The cold that pervaded the underground labyrinth came from my magic. Spellcasters aren't affected much by their own magic, so I hardly felt cold. I should have paid attention. I was only thinking about myself. I took out one of the magic pouches from my bag and reached in for outerwear. Then I stopped walking, took it out, and handed it to Kaya. It was a school uniform cardigan. Take it. No, I'm fine, you look cold at a glance, so why are you refusing? I draped the cardigan loosely over Kaya's shoulders and moved my feet again. She clutched the cardigan and followed behind me, her head bowed. Thank you. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Feels burdened and grateful that you gave her the outerwear. As I made my way through the underground labyrinth, I came across disaster ants that had turned into ice statues. It was a terrible fate for the demons who were unprepared for the sudden icy disaster. There were no traps to be found while traversing the labyrinth. Even if there were, they would have frozen and ceased to function. I was moving without a hitch. Thump. It was small, but clearly audible, the sound of a heart beating. Thump, thump, thump. We would soon arrive at the end of the underground labyrinth. From the other side of the labyrinth, the sound of a heartbeat could be heard. Kaya's eyes narrowed, showing her wariness. Her reaction alone told me what she was going to say. I can feel it, this nasty mana. Is there a demon in front of us? I didn't feel any unpleasant mana because my mana perception was so low, but I nodded. There was no point in being tired trying to feel the mana. However, just hearing this heartbeat gave me the feeling that something terrifying was up ahead. Thump, 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 thump. Finally, as I walked out of the underground labyrinth, a high ceiling and a wide space spread out before my eyes. Because of my magic, this place had transformed into an ice cave, and the ant legion, which was standing in order, was frozen solid. At the end of the path where they were arranged in rows like trees, there was a very large heart, a golden heart, which beat at regular intervals. The black gum-dot-like exterior moved with the heartbeat, and the blood vessels leading from the heart to various places in the cave radiated a harmonious color of gold and black. Thump, 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 What is that? Kaya appeared to be stunned by the magnificent sight. A demon, I answered simply. Inside the huge golden heart, the silhouette of a hideous creature glowed. It was easy to infer what it looked like just by looking at its silhouette. Garzia the Hermit, LV. 110 Race. Demon Elements. Darkness, Rock Danger. High Psychology. Wants to kill you, the intruder. In Act 2, Chapter 4 of Magic Knight of M. Raken, Garzia was level 140. He had been raising his level in this manner. Even though the entire cave was frozen with frost wave, he looked fine. It seemed to have high elemental resistance. It must be because I used magic from afar. Is that Zephyrim? Garzia's mana remnants were transformed into the magic stone called Zephyrim, and it was nestled in every corner of the cave. My magic had frozen it, but the pale yellow light that was unique to Zephyrim was clearly visible. Perfect. Now, the only thing left to do was kill Garzia in one swift motion. Wreck. As expected, he wouldn't stand still. Around the golden heart where he was hiding, a massive wall of rock erupted from the ground and enclosed it. The rock wall was a pearly black color. Rock wall, rock element, 4, plus black rock, rock element, 5, equals indestructible iron body, rock element, a black, iron-like rock surrounded the heart and blood vessels. It was as solid and impenetrable as a castle wall. A showdown between an unstoppable spear and an impenetrable shield. The only option was to accept the challenge. Isaac. I headed towards Garzia's heart. The demon has been recognized as an enemy. The unique trait, Hunter, is activated. The level and stats are temporarily greatly enhanced. The skill tree temporarily becomes +10. Cold Divergence, Ice Element, 1. In order to increase the magic output, I began sending a hazy cold air through my entire body. The cold air seeped out like a haze. Like opening a window in a stuffy room to let in fresh air, I felt like I could increase my ice mana output even more smoothly. Garcia the Hermit, Psychology. Wants to defeat you with a rock burial. Kudududududududu. Crushing the ice that froze the surrounding area from the ground, pillars of rock flew in from both sides. Rock burial, rock element, 4. Towering rock pillars oppressively covered the air, trying to crush me. Sir Isaac. I heard Kaya's worried cry. It was alright, I could withstand this much. As soon as I heard the sound of the rock burial being activated, I lightly waved my index finger wrapped in mana. With a flick of my finger, thick walls of ice rose from the ground to the ceiling on both sides. Ice wall, ice element, 4. Kyuwuwing. And the rock and ice collided. The boulder created with rock burial couldn't pierce the ice wall that I made. I strode along the narrow path made by ice wall until I arrived in front of the heart. Thump, 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 thump. The huge heart was floating high up in the air. It was truly a magnificent sight. As I looked up at it, my neck began to hurt. Garcia's heart began to beat more fiercely, perhaps from anger. My ears started to hurt. I stretched out my right hand toward the heart wrapped in a sturdy-looking, indestructible iron body. In this situation, I needed to use my most powerful short-range magic. I condensed the mana in my right hand. I engraved the spells, Frost Explosion, and Black Ice, in my mind. A light blue magic circle appeared in front of my right hand, and a black magic circle appeared behind it, overlapping it. A dark blue, Frost Explosion, magic circle was formed in this manner. Then, the extremely condensed mana exploded into my hand. Frost Explosion, Ice Element, 5, plus Black Ice, Ice Element, 5, equals Black Frost Explosion, Ice Element, Kwa. The black ice exploded and attacked the giant heart. The blackish-blue cold air raged as the dark ice crystals and my white hair fluttered in the wind. A direct hit. In an instant, the heart was engulfed by the ice that suddenly erupted and appeared ready to devour everything. However, thump, 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 thump. Inside the black ice mass, the heart was still beating. The indestructible iron body could not be pierced. Following that, the sound of rocks moving within the ice was heard. It was clear that mana was flowing to repair the indestructible iron body. When the ice exploded, the Frost Explosion unleashed tremendous power. In addition, black ice, which increased the power of magic, was applied, so the magic I cast now was my maximum power. In other words, my spear failed to penetrate the shield. The level difference is in my favor, but that means Garcia, who was gathering strength in the form of a heart, seemed to have defense magic proficiency in elemental resistance far beyond his level. It was as if killing Garcia beforehand wasn't allowed. I felt the will of something like Providence. What should I do? Should I use the Black Frost Explosion again? No, it would be foolish to do so without a plan. Even if Hunter is activated, using Black Ice and Frost Explosion consumes a lot of mana. Not to mention, it didn't take much time for Garcia to repair the indestructible iron body after being hit by my magic. The sound alone was sufficient for me to grasp. In other words, if he continued to repair indestructible iron body while I fired Black Frost Explosion, I would be at a disadvantage. But, if I increased the power a little more, my magic would be able to reach him directly. And the way to deliver the strongest possible blow. That ice is here. Kaya. Ha. I turned to face Kaya. In Magic Knight of M. Raken, there was definitely a joint attack system. A joint attack could effectively demonstrate elemental synergy. When elemental synergy was activated, the effect of my elemental magic overlapping with another element would become stronger. As a result, more powerful magic could be poured onto Garcia. How about you? Don't you also want to have some fun? I recall Kaya's psychology from before. She seemed to aspire to be something akin to an apostle of justice, fighting the evils that threatened the academy. I pretended to be considerate by asking Kaya that casually. And soon, Kaya's face brightened up. Kaya Astrian, psychology. Delighted by the thought that she can play an active role. Yes. Kaya flew towards me quickly, with light green wind wrapped around her body, and landed lightly next to me. I stretched out my right arm toward the heart encased in a block of black ice. Meanwhile, Kaya also stretched out her left arm and pointed her wand toward the heart. Who? Wind generation, wind element, 1, Kaya's wind began to swirl around her. The rough and disorderly wind blew fiercely and shook my hair, Kaya's hair, and our clothes indiscriminately, carrying with it a chill that emanated from me. BDNVLDM. The wind element was characterized by the continuous generation of wind to increase the power of subsequent wind spells. She was creating wind to increase the power of the attack she was about to unleash. Thank you for the opportunity, Sir Isaac. I also wanted to hit that demon with my magic. I see. Kaya seemed to think that I could easily defeat Garcia. She must have thought that the magic from earlier was only at a level to gauge his defense capabilities. Among the attack magic you can use right now, tell me which is the most powerful. It's Gale Fong. Good. Gale Fong was a 5-star wind spell, and if I could combine ice magic with it. Frost Fire. I engraved the spells of Frost Fire and Black Ice in my mind. Then, in front of my right hand, a dark blue magic circle appeared, stretching toward the heart. Meanwhile, right next to me, a green magic circle formed and began to slowly rotate in front of Kaya's wand, which stretched toward the heart and behind her. I released the ice block that was covering the heart. The block of ice disintegrated into glowing dark blue powder and scattered, displaying the heart wrapped in a sturdy, indestructible iron body, intact. When I give you the order, you'll shoot. Yes. In the Hunter state, my elemental synergy was S. Class. The joint attack I unleash with Kaya should at least be twice as powerful as my previous combination of Frost Explosion and Black Ice. Cold Air and Frost, Pale Blue Ice Mana, and Black Dark Mana were all swirling together. A cold, dark blue flame formed in front of my right hand, and it began to burn. Frost Fire, Ice Element, 4, plus Black Ice, Ice Element, 5, equals Winter Hellfire, Ice Element. As it was, I fired the cold flames. Now. At my cry, Kaya and I shot out the magic at the same time. The cold, dark blue icy flames were surrounded by a sharp light green wind. The wind drew a clear trajectory from both sides and rose obliquely toward the heart. Why? A firestorm of cold air quickly erupted. As if it didn't want to miss its prey, the heart was engulfed in a vicious whirlwind as if a pack of wolves rushed in and bit it. The strong wind that swirled around the Frost Fire hit the heart with a series of blows. Winter Hellfire, Ice Element, plus Gale Fong, Wind Element, 5, equals Glacial Tempest of the Endless Night, Ice plus Wind Element, Chaak. Chaak. War. Quack. Rock debris flew everywhere. Amidst the billowing cold and raging gusts of wind, the indestructible iron body shattered and fell apart. A viscous pale yellow liquid gushed out like a waterfall. The heart's blood vessels, which were guarded by the indestructible iron body, were severed by the glacial tempest of the endless night. The golden heart was consumed in cold flames and collapsed powerlessly in front of Kaya. Kawawang. Kaiwuyu. A strange whimpering sound was heard right in front of us. Kaya and I lowered our heads and gazed at the source of the whimpering, a human ant with huge horns on both sides of his head and razor-sharp claws in front of his mouth. Its body was full of sharp claws, a pale white skin, and a female dot-like form armored in black. Just like an ant, there was a large pocket behind the buttocks, like an ant's belly. Garcia the Hermit. His golden eyes gleamed as he laid on the floor, glaring at us. He was slightly smaller than what I had seen in game, but he was still well over 4 meters tall. Our magic seemed to have pierced the indestructible iron body, and ruthlessly rammed him, judging by the green blood flowing all over his body. It was a terrible sight. This is the demon, Kaya furrowed her brows. Garcia the Hermit, Psychology. I want to kill you, 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 I want to kill you. I want to kill you. Fully formed, Garcia stood well over 4 meters tall and leads his minions, the disaster ants, in an attack during the Academy's practical training. He was like a killing machine who aimed to kill many students, which included Ian. I approached Garcia and extended my right hand to him. It's a pity that you couldn't fulfill your ambition. I condensed mana into my right hand. A light blue magic circle formed in front of my right hand. Kyuyu. And the condensed cold mana exploded in an instant. Frost explosion, ice element, 5, Kwaawea. The ice rushed toward Garcia. A torrent of cold. It was the finishing blow. Chapter 19. Camping, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Camping, 1, the casting of Frost Explosion was over. Garcia was trapped inside a huge block of ice, covered in scars. As the ice was released, the ice block disintegrated into a light blue powder that scattered and vanished. Soon after, Garcia's body turned to gray powder and scattered futilely. Is it over? It's over. As soon as the enemy's resurrection spell was neutralized, Kaya immediately confirmed the outcome. Congratulations. You've defeated the demon, Garcia the Hermit, LV 110, and gained EXP. Level up. Your level has increased to 40. You have gained an additional 8 bonus stat points. Soon after, the Hunter trait was released, and my body suddenly became heavy. It was a feeling I could never get used to. Thud. At that moment, one of the swords that Garcia was holding fell to the ground. It was a dagger with a black sheath. I immediately picked up the dagger. You've acquired the loot, Sheath of Disaster. Sheath of Disaster. If you engrave a magic circle with a spell and infuse it with the required amount of mana for casting, the spell can be used at the location of the sheath. Limit. 5. Star magic cooldown. 10 minutes rating. Tier 1. The Sheath of Disaster. It was an immensely helpful item that significantly broadened my tactical options. When using the spell engraved on the sheath, there was no consumption of mana. That was because it was meant to be used after filling the necessary mana beforehand. The embedded blade was a disguise. It was just a normal dagger. Sir Isaac, what is that? A weapon that the demon possessed. I will retrieve it. This is mine now, hee. Suppressing the urge to hum, I put the Sheath of Disaster into the magic pouch. Now that I've defeated Garcia the Hermit, the disaster ants should have been destroyed as well. However, I had frozen them, leaving them unable to move and entrapped in ice. I reached out my hand and dispelled the ice that covered the entire cave. The ice that froze the cave disintegrated into blue powder and dispersed like fireflies. For a brief moment, this massive ice release looked like a fireworks display. I could tell from Kaya's exclamation that she also thought it was a beautiful sight. The disaster ants, who had been standing in order, quickly turned to gray powder and vanished. At that moment, a system window popped up in front of me. Congratulations! You've defeated 300 disaster ants, LV70, and gained EXP. Level up. Your level has increased to 50. You have unlocked the achievement. Genocide. You have gained an additional 10 bonus stat points. Whoa, no, whoa, hold on a second. When I defeated Garzia in Act 2, Chapter 4 of Magic Knight of M. Raken, all the disaster ants were destroyed as a result, but I received no EXP. The only things that gave EXP were the disaster ants that you directly defeated. Even worse, the disaster ants didn't come at you all at once, using a wide variety of tactics to constantly put pressure on the player instead. This made defeating all of them an impossible task. However, while freezing the entire cave, I unknowingly touched the entire disaster ant population, and it was judged that I had dealt with all of the disaster ants. As a result of this, an experience party was held, and I achieved the genocide achievement. Oh, oh. Just as I was about to scream at the surging sense of accomplishment, I saw Kaya's eyes. I coughed and came to my senses. No, I shouldn't. I could celebrate after I've parted ways with Kaya. Until then, it was better to put this joy to rest. Ha ha ha. Sir Isaac. Kaya, I have a favor to ask of you. What is it? Kaya's green eyes sparkled. Her eyes were full of expectations, as if she were a curious child. Kaya Astrian, LV. Race. Human elements. Wind, ice danger. Psychology. Delighted at the thought of doing you a favor. It's nice to be happy, but isn't that a slave mindset? In any case, she gained company op EXP and leveled up too. Even though her level was in the 90s and had only increased by 1, she must have gained a lot of experience. Kaya's performance appeared to have been deemed excellent this time. Well, I admit it, I was glad things worked out as well as they did. If Kaya wasn't here, I would have been in serious trouble. Now there's only one thing left to do. I'm going to retrieve that now, I said, pointing to the pale yellow magic stone, Zephyrim, lying on the ground. Help me with that. Honestly, you became stronger thanks to me, right? I can ask for this much, can't I? All right. Kaya agreed willingly. After I handed her one of the empty magic pouches, she moved to the opposite corner of the cave and began collecting Zephyrim. Before long, she used powerful wind magic and gathered all the scattered Zephyrim into one place. Thanks to that, I was able to conveniently sweep up all of the Zephyrim. But what are all these magic stones? She queried, while depositing Zephyrim into the magic pouch. I didn't feel the need to lie, so I answered truthfully, a material used for forging weapons. Are you thinking of making a weapon? No, I'm going to sell it. I'm collecting it to make money. Kaya nodded as if she understood. You were short on gel because you were pretending to be weak. If you had told me, I would have helped you anytime. That's too much of a request. Kaya was the second seat of the first year's magic department and the daughter of the Duke Astrian. For example, if a grade E commoner like me were to be seen having a friendly meal with her, I couldn't even imagine the troublesome rumors that would spread among the students. I do not need it, I answered sternly. On the journey back, Kaya and I were climbing up the dark uphill road after exiting the underground labyrinth, relying on the light of the luminous lamp. The magic bag, containing 2 magic pouches full of Zephyrim, weighed heavily on my shoulder. In addition, the sheath of disaster. Isn't it too full, Sir Isaac? As we walked quietly, Kaya suddenly broke the silence. What was that black ice from before? As expected. I was wondering when she'd ask. The black ice was a magic created by combining ice and darkness elements. No one could say it was demon magic simply because it cast black light, but in this situation, it was understandable to have doubts. If I evaded this question, there was a high chance that Kaya would imagine something wild. Should I make something up and say it? But there was no need for that. I decided to answer honestly. Did you use a magic tool to change the color or something? It's demon magic. Kaya's eyes widened. Whying? Kaya immediately retreated to the other side, wind magic wrapped around her feet. Her tense face showed her alert posture. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Wonders if you are a demon. See, this is what happens. I came to a stop and said calmly, I defeated a demon in the past and obtained an item. Item. Remnant of Darkness. It's a tier 1 item that combines dark mana and my elemental mana in order to allow me to learn new magic. That's how I can use black ice. The term tier referred to an item's rarity. The lower the number, the more rare and valuable it was, and tier 1 was without a doubt the highest grade. By the way, did my response sound too much like an explanation? It may look like I am lying. 3 seconds. 3 eerily silent seconds had passed, as if time had stopped. Kaya lowered her gaze and nodded. She seemed to have arrived at her own conclusion. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Trusts you. I defeated a demon and showed Kaya. That alone demonstrated that I wasn't siding with the demons. Perhaps Kaya thought similarly. I'm sorry for doubting you. Kaya relaxed her guard and returned to my side. 20 minutes later. We emerged from Tantak underground cave. We were greeted by the starry night sky and a view of the gorge, the nearby forest, and the unpaved road. Perhaps it was because our spirits were lifted, but the scenery appeared especially beautiful. We finally made it. Thank you for your hard work, Sir Isaac. Yeah. But, how will we go back to the dormitory? Oh right. How was I planning to get back? Are you going to camp? No, seriously. It was an hour's walk from here to the carriage stop. It was already late, so the carriage service had to be over. Besides, there were no accommodations around here. In addition, there was a limit to how far Kaya could fly using her wind magic. It was the act of condensing enough wind to carry a person while releasing it steadily and continuously. The amount of mana consumed was unavoidably enormous if it wasn't intended to be used for a short period of time. Even at Kaya's level, it didn't matter how much mana she had, she would run out after flying for about 3 minutes. Did you come here without any plans? I said, while Kaya silently lowered her head, her face beet red. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Embarrassed to show her clumsy appearance. That's understandable. She never thought I was going to camp and followed me without a plan. Follow me. I'll take care of you. Ha. Kaya's face was filled with skepticism. It was as if a question mark had appeared above her head. In the middle of the gorge. I was lost in self-indulgence as the radiant crescent moon reflected my appearance on the rippling stream. The gorge kept the wind at bay, making it quiet, and the ground was flat. In a nutshell, it was the perfect camping spot. I took everything I needed for camping out of my magic pouch. First, I unfolded the simple tent and installed it with ease. It looked surprisingly comfortable with a blanket and luminous lamp placed inside. Then, I pulled out 2 makeshift chairs. It was a good thing I had brought some extras just in case. Kaya just stood there blankly. She seemed amazed by my intention to earnestly camp out. You came here with such a plan, of course. I could catch a cold if I slept like that. I did overspend, but I figured I could make a lot of money by selling Zephram anyway. It turned out to be the best choice. Kaya, can you bring me some firewood? Oh, are you going to start a campfire? I nodded. I'll be back soon. BDNV. Kaya wrapped herself in wind magic and flew into the forest over the gorge. If she had her wind magic, she would be able to create firewood easily. Well, I did help her get stronger rapidly, and I decided to provide her with camping equipment, so I guess it was okay to ask for that much. I sat in a folding chair and placed a dimly lit luminous lamp in front of me. Let's see. I took out the sheath of disaster from my magic pouch and started examining it. There were fine scratches covering the black sheath. When I stroked it, the smooth texture had a hint of roughness to it. On the outside, it looked old and plain. Therefore, it was a good item to catch opponents off guard. Shook. I took out the dagger from its sheath and held it up. A dagger with a moderately sharp edge. It really was just a normal weapon. Still, the dagger itself had its own functions, so it could be useful in many ways. I put down the blade and turned my gaze back to the sheath of disaster. I was going to engrave the Frost Explosion magic circle on this sheath. Then I could use Frost Explosion without consuming any mana if I had the sheath of disaster with me. I wouldn't have to release mana. I wouldn't even have to pretend to use magic. Wasn't it suitable for catching the opponent off guard? However, the cooldown was 10 minutes, and I would need to keep enough mana in the sheath equal to the amount spent on Frost Explosion each time I used it. I would most likely only use it once per battle, but that single use would give me the edge needed to win. Of course, just engraving a magic circle and infusing it with mana wasn't enough. It had to be a spell I could use. I reached level 50 today, so I should be able to learn Frost Explosion soon. At the very least, I wanted to learn it before the PvP performance evaluation. I'm back, Sir Isaac. Kaya had already arrived. Next to her, the firewood was spinning in a little whirlwind. She's really fast, she would do well as a soldier. Come to think of it, life in the Astrian family mansion must be no different than in an army. Good job. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Delighted to hear your praise. She looks like a puppy. I felt embarrassed for no reason. Have I ever had this much influence over someone? I couldn't think of anything other than when I was a class leader in elementary school. Anyway, I now needed to light a fire. I took out a fire magic scroll engraved with a magic circle from my magic pouch and spread it out on the ground and fixed it with a rolling stone. I activated the magic scroll by infusing it with mana. The spell was then activated, and a soft flame rose gently. Fire generation, fire element, 1, elemental scrolls could only be obtained up to a maximum of 2 stars. This was because there was a limit to the amount of mana that could be stored in a magic scroll. The 1 star fire magic scroll I got was also useful in real life. Kaya released her wind magic and placed the firewood on top of the fire magic scroll. Before long, the firewood caught fire and started burning, and the campfire was complete. Oh. Are you feeling okay? Sit down, I said to Kaya, who just stood there blankly, as I pointed to the folding chair set up next to me. Yes, sir. The warmth of the bonfire was comforting, but the weather was still cold. I took out a blanket and wrapped myself in it before passing the extra blanket to Kaya. She thanked me and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders in the same way I did. Afterward, I heated water over the campfire and gave her a cup of warm tea. Kaya must have been amused by the number of things I brought out, as seen from the grin on her face. It's warm, Kaya's expression softened, as if her body was melting. Crackle. The sound of a campfire burning was rampant. We quietly watched the campfire while sipping the warm tea. The silence wasn't that uncomfortable. It's been a while since I've felt this relaxed. It was the first time I felt relaxed after being transmigrated into Magic Knight of M.Raken. It had been a month and a half since I transmigrated into this game, and I was working hard to get stronger. I needed to be as strong as possible in order to defeat the final boss, the evil god Nephid. Maybe that was why this moment of leisure felt awkward. Suddenly, the life that had been passing by rose quietly, swaying like smoke from a bonfire, like a haze. It was a life that I tried hard not to regret. I ended up transmigrating into this game, but I didn't have any thoughts of giving up. Because if I gave up now, then it would all be over. I had clearly felt that already throughout my life while struggling through the exams that would decide my future. It was hard. Magic training, physical training, and then studying. Every day, I pushed myself over and over again to the point where I felt like 24 hours a day wasn't enough. But it was okay once you got used to the hard times. Even now, I was doing well in my routine. As expected, all sorts of thoughts surrounded my head as I was spending time quietly. However, it was fortunate that at this time, one of the people I had a lot of affection for from Magic Knight of M. Raken was right next to me. It might be that thing called psychological comfort. She must have finished her tea by now. At the thought of giving her another cup of tea, I turned towards the person I held dear to me. For some reason, Kaya had her head lowered and her face was beet red. Above her head, smoke seemed to be rising like a hot spring mark. Could it be that she caught a cold because of the chill in the cave earlier? Even then, she seemed embarrassed to admit she was feeling cold. To check if she was suffering from a poor physical condition, I opened her status window to understand her psychology. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Extremely nervous at the thought of being with you. I was a fool for worrying. Chapter 20. Camping, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Camping, 2, I could understand her. Since childhood, Kaya grew up like a soldier under the protection of the sword St. Gerald, and lived a life where she built a wall around herself and men. For her, being in a situation where she has to sleep in the same place as a man must have been quite a psychological blow. Besides, I wasn't ugly. When I saw Isaac's face in the mirror, he appeared to be rather attractive. She even admired me. The conditions were just right for something strange to happen. I cast another glance at Kaya. She was still nervous. She must have been afraid that I would touch her. In a good way, a bad way, or both. That didn't mean I could sleep outside, I only had one tent. Even if I made an igloo with ice magic, it was useless because I wouldn't be able to control my mana while asleep, and the spell would be dispelled. In the quiet night, the sound of a crackling campfire and a gently flowing stream could be heard. If I kept my mouth shut while listening to natural ASMR like this, the strange atmosphere would only get worse. Just then, my drowsiness kicked in, and I was starting to feel sleepy. Perhaps in this situation, it would be a good way to reassure her in this situation if I went to the tent's corner and fell asleep first. I'm sleepy. Let's sleep. Ah, yes, yes. Private Kaya Astrian. She reminded me of when I first joined the military and was assigned to my own unit. I was a private. I got up from the folding chair, with a blanket draped over my shoulders. Then I entered the tent first, while ignoring Kaya, who was staring at me. There was enough room for the two of us. I went to the farthest corner, and laid down there so Kaya could sleep comfortably. Ah! This cozy feeling, what is it? It's nice. It doesn't feel like I'm just coming over and camping. It's real camping. Excuse me, after some time had passed, Kaya cautiously came inside. Every move she made was fraught with tension. Her blanket was slung over her shoulders and tightly wrapped around her body. I did not respond on purpose. I only squinted my eyes slightly before closing them and pretended to be asleep. Kaya went to the corner opposite of me and laid down. I could hear the duvet and blanket rubbing against each other. Suddenly, it was quiet. Will she be able to sleep well? I slowly opened my eyes and glanced in Kaya's direction. Oh my! Tremble, I wasn't sure why, but Kaya's body was shaking violently like a bell. She stared at the empty tent ceiling, her blanket pulled up to her lips. She was tightly sticking to the opposite corner, making the center of the tent appear very empty. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Nervous at the thought of sleeping alongside you, as if her heart is going to burst. I won't touch you, so don't worry. Well, she'll fall asleep eventually. Thinking that, I closed my eyes again. My whole body felt languid. It seemed that fatigue had piled up. After finishing a full day of classes, I rode a carriage to Tantak Cave, and killed Garzia the hermit. Sir Isaac. Kaya suddenly called out to me. You said that you detected the demon's mana residing in the underground cave while at the academy. Did you know, by any chance, that I was following you, or even when I was around? Of course, I didn't know. As I reflected on what she had just said, it seemed like this wasn't the first time Kaya has followed me. In any case, Kaya following me for whatever reason wasn't a situation that I wanted to deal with. It was because there was a great risk that my secret would be exposed if she found out about my daily routine, where I was constantly training. If that happened, I didn't know what kind of aftermath would follow. Unforeseen variables were a frightful factor in a position where I had to be as cautious as possible. Don't do that again. It's annoying, I said calmly, clutching onto my sleepy mind. Ah, I understand. Kaya's answer trembled like an earthquake. That should be enough. Letting go of the tension in my mind, I fell into a dream. It had been about 3 hours. I awoke from a dream in which I fell asleep during a cold weather military training. I was also dozing off there. I raised my upper body. It was too cold in the morning to be sleeping with just one blanket. Although I didn't feel much cold from my own magic, I was no different from a normal person when it came to the cold caused by the outside environment. Ugh, it's cold, I grumbled as I turned to face Kaya. I saw her lying with her back to me, covered by a blanket. After draping the blanket over her, I pulled out a change of clothes from my magic pouch. I was going to sleep with this on. It couldn't be helped. It was better for me to suffer the cold than for her, who had followed me with a childish mind. Ah! The sheath of disaster that was in my extra clothes touched my hand. I took out that item too. Every time I saw it, I was filled with pride. When I was young, I remembered getting one of the Egyptian god cards, Obelisk the Tormentor, in a U.Gi.O pack and looking at it all day long while being happy. I felt similar emotions as back then. When I gently touched the sheath of disaster, a smile naturally formed on my lips. Beautiful. Hee hee. I hope to use it well in the future. I put the sheath of disaster back into the magic pouch. I have to sleep again. I covered my body with the extra clothes I had taken out and laid down. As expected, it was cold. I curled up and folded my arms, trying to retain as much body heat as possible. Luckily, sleep came easily. The first company wake-up call. Beep 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 beep. In my dream, I awoke to an alarm sound that I never wanted to hear again. It was brief, but it felt like crap. Surprisingly, I felt refreshed and well-rested. Perhaps because I slept for so long. I had been so busy with classes, training, and studying that I had to sacrifice sleep time, so fatigue became a passive skill for me. This refreshing feeling, it felt awkward. As I yawned and lifted my upper body, the blanket that was covering my body slid down. There was no sign of anyone beside me. When I turned my head, I couldn't see Kaya there. She seemed to have covered me with a blanket and then left. I opened the tent door. A cool morning breeze drove away any lingering drowsiness I had, and soon the crackling of a campfire followed. I peered through the tent door. The morning sun illuminated the gorge. I could see the back of Kaya, who was sitting on a folding chair in front of the campfire. She wore the coat I gave her yesterday with a blanket draped over her shoulders. The charred firewood in front of her was most likely freshly cut this morning. I put on my shoes and walked out of the tent. Then. Ha! Kaya, who was startled for some reason, quickly turned her head toward me. Why are you so surprised? Ah, Sir Isaac. Are you awake? Kaya smiled awkwardly, with dark circles under her eyes. Her skin was white and fair, so it was particularly noticeable. It doesn't seem like she slept properly. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. She feels relieved that you didn't touch her, but is skeptical of her charm as a woman. What am I supposed to do? After about 30 minutes of walking, the carriage stop appeared. Kaya and I boarded a carriage and set off. Perhaps because a male and female student appeared out of nowhere, the coachman regarded us with suspicion. The carriage began its journey towards the academy. Soon after, Kaya started nodding off as she rested her head against the carriage window, falling asleep. Her coat slid down, exposing her small shoulders. I lifted her coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her head swayed as the carriage swayed, which caused her head to land on my shoulder. She was completely relaxed. Thinking about it, I was uncertain what would have happened if Kaya hadn't been there. Originally, it wasn't allowed in Magic Knight of M. Raken to go and defeat Garzia before he completely stockpiled his power. To begin with, you couldn't even enter Tantak Cave until the end of Act 2, Chapter 4. I completely deviated from the formula and explored previously unknown segments of the game. As a result, perfect preparation was impossible. However, thanks to Kaya, I was able to successfully pierce Garzia's indestructible iron body. Moreover, I had no trouble collecting Zephyrin. Firewood was also readily available, avoiding the need for strenuous physical labor. Thank you. You helped out a lot. I'll repay you someday. I leaned my head against the opposite window and gazed out. The morning sun illuminated the leafy green trees. The morning fog that had blanketed the forest was also dissipating. And the sky was dyed in the purest blue light. About 4 hours later, the carriage arrived at the academy. A sight of familiar buildings came into view. I even had the illusion that I had returned home. Kaya was still fast asleep. She seemed to be exhausted. Kaya, we're here. I shook Kaya's shoulder, trying to wake her up. As soon as I said those words, she opened her eyes and sat up straight. Wake up. Ah. It was obviously an instinctive move. She lived her life pretending to be gentle and meek, but in reality, her entire body was imbued with military discipline. Did we arrive? Yes, we've arrived. Kaya got out of her carriage first, turned her head away from me, and covered her mouth. She seemed to be secretly yawning. I followed her and handed the payment to the coachman. He bowed lightly and drove away. She looks very tired. It would be best to send her home as soon as possible. But there was something important I needed to say. I wasn't sure if it was necessary, but I didn't want to leave it out. Kaya. Yes, Sir Isaac. Kaya stiffened her movements as she turned her head towards me. It was a tense situation. In any case, it would be best to keep the defeat of Garzia a secret. If Alice Carroll, the student body president, found out, it would be the end of my life. Fortunately, she didn't know about the existence of Garzia, let alone an item like the Sheath of Disaster. Alice was just a shadowy figure trying to help the evil god Nephid manifest. The evil god Nephid wasn't on her side. Keep yesterday's incident a secret. It would be troublesome if others find out, so don't reveal it to anyone. Ah, yes, Kaya's voice crawled in like the sound of an ant's chirp. Wasn't it a bit cute? Her face was flushed red again. Kaya Astrian, Psychology. Embarrassed and flattered about having a secret between you and her. What is she mistaken about again? I mean the demon. Ah, the demon, of course, I was thinking about the demon. I'll keep it a secret. I'm sure Sir Isaac must have a deep meaning. And also, Kaya raised her head and looked at me with a solemn expression. The reason why demons appear in the academy, the reason Sir Isaac searches for and defeats the demons. Is there something in this academy that I don't know about? You don't have to answer. Sir Isaac is an amazing person, so there must be a good reason why you can't tell me. The atmosphere became heavy. It might have been a good idea to use the flow of the conversation to win Kaya over to my side. The evil god Nephid, the final boss, was the root of all evil. If I could find a companion to share information about that guy, it would certainly be great psychological support, especially if that companion was Kaya. But I didn't want to put such shackles on Kaya. The advent of a mighty being that could easily destroy the world. I wondered what the difference was between that and a death sentence. It was highly likely to put a heavy psychological burden on Kaya. Anyway, I would keep defeating demons until I reached the evil god Nephid. I already devised a plan, and if all went well, Kaya would most likely follow my words. There wasn't much of a difference. So it would be best if I did not respond to this. Thank you, Sir Isaac. I will go in now. Kaya understood my silence as an answer and slightly bowed in farewell. She took off the school uniform cardigan and gave it back to me, turned around and walked away. As I watched her leave, I fell into deep thought. M.Raken Academy was spread across an entire island. So, under the leadership of the academy, a small economy developed on this island, and money circulated. It meant that all sorts of places you would expect to find in a city were here. However, according to academy rules, academy students were not permitted to sell items brought from outside. Students were only permitted to sell items obtained legally on academy grounds. Upon entering the academy, all students were bound by the Marks Pact. It was an absolute oath governed by a providence created by Archwizard Marks, and it was effective only on the grounds of M.Raken Academy. Failure to comply would result in a forced expulsion, with one of the suspension conditions being the sale of goods brought from outside. It was also prohibited to create added value in the form of consignment sales or subcontracting. I could feel a sense of determination from M.Raken Academy that said, "This is our land, so we will monopolize it." Zephyrim was a mana stone obtained within the academy grounds, and was an unowned object. I was relieved that I wasn't going to break any rules. As an aside, the Marks Pact covered more than just trading. For example, it was strictly prohibited to bring in consumable items containing magic from outside sources. This included things such as magic scrolls and potions. After parting ways with Kaya, I went to the appraisal center. Beyond a glass case lined with miscellaneous items, a short old man greeted me. "Whoa, what kind of young man are you?" In Magic Night of M.Raken, there were several appraisal centers, and among them, this one ran by Harrison was the most generous. The only problem with it was that it wasn't accessible at the beginning of the game. However, because I already knew about the secret shop, content that was only available later in the game, I was sure that I could enter this place as well. I wasn't bound by the game's story after all. I couldn't wait to see how much I would get for selling Zephyrim here. I was looking forward to it. As a side note, there was an unwritten rule at the appraisal center that they didn't pry into anything unless it was illegal, regardless of who brought it in. Harrison, on the other hand, was a veteran with an open mind, so he wouldn't mind if I brought a bunch of Zephyrim. He would probably just think of me as a lucky young man. I politely bowed and took out 2 magic pouches. Although the magic pouch could reduce weight, it couldn't be reduced to 0. Therefore, the magic pouch containing Zephyrim was quite heavy. However, my body was now trained in a hell-like PT. Carrying a magic pouch like this wasn't easy, but it wasn't enough to kill me. I opened the magic pouch and took out the pale yellow magic stone, Zephyrim, and placed it on top of the glass case. Harrison's gaze shifted from me to the Zephyrims. "I'm here to get an appraisal." "Oh, this is..." Harrison picked up one of the Zephyrims and began examining it through a magnifying glass. "Let's see, this is..." Harrison began to move the Zephyrim around. I remembered Ian Fairytale getting frustrated with his slow movements in Magic Night of M.Raken. But given his age, I decided to be patient with him. His movements were very slow, but it was worth the wait. That's right. No, somehow his movements were seriously slow, like a sloth, but it was still tolerable. Gee, 10 minutes passed like that. But just before my patience was about to explode. When are you going to tell me? 3,000 gels. What? 3,000 gels for one of these will be enough. Off you go. My frustration disappeared like the melting snow. I had brought a total of 56 zephrons. I did some quick math. That meant 168,000 gels. At that moment, my thoughts ceased. Only one thought filled my head, bright and clear. Tonight's dinner was beef. My lady, where on earth have you been all night? Inside Charles Hall, the highest dormitory of M.Riken Academy. When Kaya saw Mary, the maid who had been waiting for her all night worrying, she replied with a serious face. I have been protecting the peace of the academy. Mary was puzzled, unsure of the meaning behind Kaya's words. After Kaya reassured Mary through a conversation and said she wanted to rest by herself, she went into her room, a luxurious and spacious room, incomparable to the small tent she slept in the night before. But her consciousness was still inside the small tent. Demons. She reflected upon the events of the day before. Apparently, Isaac was aware that demons would appear at M.Riken Academy and enrolled. To keep the peace at the academy, he must be killing demons. And she must keep his identity a secret to not interfere with his actions. Although Kaya was unsure of Isaac's deeper meaning, she was certain that following his words was the best way to protect the people at the academy. Sir Isaac. The memories of her time with Isaac from the day before were still vivid in her mind. His overwhelming appearance when he froze the entire cave, his kind appearance when he covered her with his coat, and his cold-hearted appearance as he unleashed his magic on the demon beside her. All those memories flooded Kaya's mind. If her mind was an ocean, those memories were the seawater that filled it. He was cool, he was someone she admired. But apart from that memory, he felt a little different than usual. It was at dawn when he secretly covered her with a blanket. Kaya, who had been pretending to be asleep with her mind in a daze, felt embarrassment and a warm feeling in her chest at the same time. But above all, beautiful. Hot. Just thinking about that word made her head start emitting steam. She never imagined that Isaac would call her beautiful. Ever since yesterday, her heart had been racing. It was as if a regular and intense sound was pounding in her ears. It started out as nervousness, but after Isaac wrapped a blanket around her and said, "Beautiful," she began to feel an inexplicable sense of ecstasy. Kaya looked at her reflection in the mirror of the dressing table. Her flushed cheeks. They weren't the problem. Her hair was sticking out of her pigtails from sleeping in the tent and carriage, and the makeup that Mary had applied in the morning was pretty much gone. She hadn't paid much attention to her usual fashion, but her disheveled appearance today somehow bothered her. She tried to straighten her hair afterward, but it felt like a meaningless act. "What are you doing, me?" Kaya sighed as a sense of disbelief washed over her. She couldn't quite make sense of what she was feeling and what she was doing. Wasn't it too one-dimensional to think that it was all about looks in the first place? Isaac was the one who said it after all. Was he just being nice? Maybe he said that because he was proud of her desire to keep the peace of the academy. Wasn't it common for older people to say "beautiful" in the sense of beautiful work when they saw a praiseworthy young child? It must be like that. Maybe that was it. I think so. For some reason, Kaya couldn't take her hands off her hair for a while. She couldn't take her eyes off the mirror.